If Halo wasn't cool, I wouldn't have made a 3-hour video about it. Halo has been a major part of my life since before I knew the Pythagorean theorem, and now that Infinite's finally coming out, I want to go back and take a look at every Halo level and find out what I like and don't like about each of them. I don't want to make this intro too long, so I'll just cut to the important stuff. First of all, the title says every Halo level, but that's not exactly true. The rule I came up with is that I'm only including levels where you shoot at a bad guy. So no tutorial levels, no cutscene only levels, no stupid Halo 5 walk around and talk to people levels. Those are all fake levels. Second, this list is completely subjective. You can have this many combinations of these 70 levels, so it's virtually impossible that you agree with my whole list. But that's okay. If everyone agreed with everyone else, the world would be boring. You can love this list, you can hate it, just please be respectful. I don't want to piss anyone off, I just want to entertain and make you think. Finally, I am not very good at Halo. All this footage is mine and mine alone, so if you see something that makes you think, wow, this guy sucks at Halo, rest assured that I'm saying, I know, bud, I know. Anyway, that's it. Let's get started. I really hope you enjoy it. So I'm gonna get this out of the way nice and early. I kinda like Halo 5. It's absolutely my least favorite Halo game, and I understand why it alienated so many long-term fans, but personally, I just don't think it's that bad of a game. But I mean, it does do a lot of things that I hate, and the thing I hate the most in any Halo game is when you're locked into a confined area and you cannot move on until key enemies or every enemy has been defeated. The breaking is that before an entire level. Alright, so let's break it down real quick. In this level, you shoot some guys until the door opens and you go to the next area. Literally, it's all you do the entire time. Look at this footage, can you even tell me what part I'm on right now? There are no distinct landmarks, no unique areas, no visual differences to separate one section from another. And it doesn't help that during the entire level, the Warden Eternal is saying some really pointless shit, just adding to the ridiculous amount of noise that comes with some Halo 5 levels.
Tell me 117, when you tear Cortana from the domain and crush her in your gauntleted fist, will you feel remorse?
Just brilliant writing in this game. Though I do actually like this exchange.
You believe this combat is anything but your death knell? Worse than you have tried.
As a grand finale, though, you have a fight with 3 Warden Eternals, a boss you've already fought 5 times throughout the campaign at this point. The breaking stole the Guinness World Record from the first 8 innings of baseball for the most boring part of a game. And I haven't even talked about the story. This level's the moment when Cortana was locked in as the new big bad of the Halo universe, at least until Halo Infinite, which is just as baffling of a move in 2021 as it was in 2015 for reasons both good and bad. Mostly bad. Instead of the promising story of Chief going AWOL, it cements the ultimate conflict of Halo 5 as human-created AIs being the bad guy, which is, I think, a story no other piece of science fiction media has done, really. I think it's just Halo that did that. It's honestly a really original and clever. The breaking is a miserable level on all counts, and it deserves nothing more than the bottom spot on this list. You know, Halo 2 used to be my favorite game in the series. It's the first game that has playable elites, it had a much more intriguing and ambitious story that expanded the characters and the lore of the Halo universe, and the new gameplay mechanics it introduced became staples in the series. Well, most of them did. But the campaign opted for quantity over quality, stretching out its content over 13 levels, resulting in a few where nothing really happens. Quarantine Zone is the absolute worst of them. This level has an actual record within the Halo franchise, being the most physically long level in any of the games. The problem is Quarantine Zone still comes off as small because of the way it's structured. The level starts off promisingly with you jumping in a ghost or a specter and blasting past sentinels and Flood, battling it out all around you. You're smashing through captured vehicles and navigating treacherous terrain with the ultimate goal of retrieving the index for Delta Halo always in the back of your mind while Steve Vai shreds on the guitar, getting you pumped full of righteous fury. That was a quarter of the level. What you're seeing right now is what makes up the rest of it. It's 60% waiting, 40% killing Flood with an energy sword. That's it. That's the entire rest of the level. And for some reason, this part is extremely stingy with the checkpoints. You can be on this gondola for 5 minutes, die because for some reason this flood was completely unfazed by your energy sword, and then start all the way back at the beginning of the ride. It's boring, it's frustrating, it's disappointing, and on top of that, it's buggy. The last time I played this level, literally none of my elites did anything. They just stood there and let me die. The end. The cutscene at the end is the only one in the original trilogy I don't remember very well because I always skip this level. It's just a complete waste of time. Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we make a level with no vehicles, no cool set pieces, and no light? Ever. And also pair you up with the worst member of Noble Team and have the second worst member of Noble Team on the radio the whole time.
Recon Bravo. The sector ahead is dark to electronic surveillance.
You're welcome, it's nightfall. Sweet dreams, kiddo. Halo Reach's campaign had a ton to offer the Halo franchise, and almost none of it is in this level. Now, sniping can be fun, which is why it's higher than the 2 previous levels, but the complete lack of light doesn't help Nightfall at all. Night vision does do this cool thing where it gives live enemies a subtle glow, but the green wash over everything is obtrusive more than anything else. At least far more so than the visor from Halo 3 ODST, which, if you're playing these games in the order they came out, you just got done with. This is the only level in the game that virtually requires you to use night vision most, if not all of the time, and it makes the entire level look exactly the same throughout. It's also the only level where you double up with June, and I just can't stand him.
Hey!
As a standalone character, he's the weakest in Noble Team, and man, he just has some of the worst dialogue ever.
You know, this stuff is stolen.
What, you gonna arrest me?
No, I'm gonna steal it back.
Nightfall dials the power fantasy of filling the shoes of a Spartan way, way down by keeping you at a distance for a huge chunk of the level. You're given a sniper rifle right at the start, and throughout there's a disproportionate number of mid to long range weapons on offer. You can't get too close to Dino Monkey or he'll wreck you, and the final section is turret after turret after turret, virtually requiring you to play it safe. Compared to the tours of absolute destruction that its 2 surrounding levels comprise, Nightfall is a glaring, obvious low point for the entire Halo Reach campaign. Hey, remember when I said that Halo 2 has some levels where nothing really happens? Uprising is a shining example of a level amounting to absolute bupkis. This guy says a few things at the beginning.
They have shed our brother's blood, and for that they must die.
And then Shipmaster says a few things at the end.
Vile, disloyal beasts. The prophets were fools to trust them.
And that's basically all you get in terms of story, but the gameplay and the structure of the level don't really make up for it. It's another pretty boring level consisting of trying really hard to get headshots on Halo 2's OP brutes, then driving past enemy emplacements, then trying to get headshots again. That's the entire level. You go from the beginning to the end. It's not even that interesting visually. I mean, I really don't know what else to say about it other than it's pretty telling for how rushed Halo 2's development was. The only thing that keeps Uprising from being the worst level in Halo 2 is that it doesn't have any truly terrible sections. It just has 0 good ones. Oh boy, this level. The first appearance of Halo 5's main villain, the Warden Eternal. The dramatic reveal of the first Guardian.
Figure that's the Guardian?
And who could forget Master Chief and Spartan Locke's epic confrontation, what this whole game has been building toward, and the ensuing minor scuffle. Unconfirmed isn't good. It gets some points for its visual presentation.
Forerunners did not lack a sense of style.
But it also loses a lot for its story beats and especially its gameplay. Let me show you what I mean. After entering the excavation site, you'll fight past a few Forerunner soldiers and land in this big open area with some ramps and crates. Once you get to this area, you get mobbed by wave after wave of Promethean enemies to the point where you're forced to just sit in the back and shoot from a distance so that you don't die and aren't forced to watch all 3 of your stupid AI teammates die one by one as they try to revive you.
I'm getting hit!
Oh really, Buck? Are you getting hit? This part straight up ruins any immersion factor you might have had up till this point. It's just a shooting gallery, it's blatant padding, and it can be fun sometimes, but not this time, especially when it's followed up by the first Warden Eternal fight, which usually goes like this.
What the hell was that thing?
6 years later, I'm still asking that question. Now, all that is bad enough, but we're not done yet because Unconfirmed ends with what is probably the most infamous cutscene in the entire series. For one thing, there seems to be no rhyme or reason to these teleporters. It might have been a fun gameplay section, but they locked it behind a cutscene and it just comes off as silly. But not nearly as silly as the Crown Jewel, Master Chief and Spartan Locke's fist fight. Like, okay, so there's no way a Spartan 4 Locke could hold his own against a Spartan 2 Master Chief, who at this point has been an active member of the UNSC for 33 years. Also, it's just Chief here. The rest of Blue Team already went into the Guardian. Why don't Locke's teammates help him? Like, they're just standing there. Why are they just standing? Every single level in Halo Combat Evolved has a unique identity. There's an element or feature that each level has which sets it apart from all the other levels in the campaign. 343 Guilty Spark is the level that introduces the Flood, the Maw is the level with the Warthog run, and the Truth and Reconciliation is the level without the pistol. Or vehicles. And it goes on too long. And half of it's dark. And there are multiple can't move on until you kill all the enemies in a room battles. I should really come up with a better name for that. How about... Truth and Reconciliation sees you infiltrating a Covenant cruiser to rescue Captain Keyes from the timeout corner. Now that should be exciting, but the pacing is just so slow and lethargic that sometimes you forget what you're even here to do. One thing I will say in this level's favor is that it introduces Hunters, one of the most fun enemies to fight, and they don't give you the most effective weapons on purpose so that this first encounter with them drives home just how imposing they are. It's also the level where you find out that Halo is a weapon, which is an interesting twist, but I mean, those are just a couple of moments. The rest of the level basically just consists of fighting the Covenant until it's over. Truth and Rec just feels and is too long, mainly down to it having 4 arena battles, none of which pretend to be anything more than blatant time sinks. Entering a Covenant ship for the first time is pretty memorable, but it quickly devolves into a directionless trek through corridors and rooms that all pretty much look the same. It's very easy to get lost on your first time playing this level, and if you're not good at sniping, the first half can be really frustrating. And even if you are good at sniping, hanging back and playing it safe is almost never the most fun way to approach a level, and it kinda defeats the whole purpose of being an unstoppable super soldier. Sorry, Linda. With so many other great levels to choose from in Halo CE's campaign, I rarely find myself coming back to this one. The release of Halo 4 marked a dramatic stylistic shift for the series. For better, worse, or neither is up to the individual. If I wanted to convince you that Halo 4 is a bad game, which I don't, I would point squarely to Shutdown. It took them 11 years to research and develop the groundbreaking technology to allow the player to fly a Pelican, and you can really tell how difficult it was because all they managed to put in the final game was a tech demo. Jokes aside, this really is all the Pelican sections are. You fly around this big empty area and occasionally shoot a phantom with a laser. The Pelican sections are disappointingly barren, but at the very least, you do get to fly a Pelican, and that honestly counts for something. The other parts of this level take place inside these towers, where you disable various systems to try to deactivate the shields around the Didact's ship. These sections feel more like chores than anything else, really, as none of them have interesting layouts or visuals, and all you do in them is go in, do the thing, and then fight your way back out. Shutdown just isn't the most interesting level in Halo 4, but it keeps itself from being truly terrible because of those first 5 minutes. The cutscene on its own is good enough, but walking past all those crew members saluting to you, and then jumping into the Pelican that Captain Del Rio thinks was ordered to try to stop you from leaving, it's a pretty powerful moment. You know, it's a reminder that even though you're not a commissioned officer and you haven't been promoted in over 30 years, your actions alone are enough to garner respect and admiration from the people you serve with. But yeah, this level kinda sucks. The final level in a Halo game has to do a lot of things. It has to neatly tie up the story, provide some of the most exciting or challenging combat in the game, and all in all have you walk away from the game feeling satisfied. Halo 5's final level doesn't really do any of that. This game has a lot in the bottom 10. Guardians arrives right on the heels of the worst level of all time, and while it's absolutely better than the Breaking, it commits to the AI good, human bad angle even harder.
The Monitor called it a threat of death.
Like the threat I lived under from the moment of my birth? Oh yes, AIs are just machines, aren't we? Mass-produced, disposable.
This level is actually fun for a little bit though. There's this part right at the beginning I didn't even know about until now where you can walk around to these different holding pens and see various enemies from the game, kind of like a zoo.
I'm afraid this soldier is not really happy to be locked down in the display case, but I cannot have them popping about. Terribly distracting.
I love you. After that, you walk along this catwalk and see what is honestly one of the coolest sights the game has to offer. Then you get on this moving platform, listen to Cortana's garbage, and land in this giant area where you have to take out a bunch of gravitational cores holding Cortana's cryptum in place. And the game kind of leaves how you go about doing that up to you. You can try to do this entire section on foot and pick off enemies using skill and tactics, concepts that Halo 5 doesn't really understand, or you can use any of the numerous vehicles that are found lying around. It doesn't really make sense that there are UNSC vehicles like a Mantis and a Gungoose lying around, but you won't hear me complaining. The really bad part of this level starts when Cortana takes the cryptum and locks you in this big ol' room. It's just another mindless arena battle with Cortana saying more stuff for you to ignore. And then the level, no, the entire campaign ends with the most boring final moment in the entire series.
Oh, hold up.
You just walk forward until you win, and no amount of yelling or atmosphere is gonna change that. Though it does have exuberant witness in it, which automatically makes a level better than a complete disaster.
I tried to warn them and, well, here we are.
Not to mention the genuinely awesome visuals it provides sometimes. And it does this really cool thing in my opinion where your victory at the end isn't really a victory at all. It's definitely not the worst level, but it's certainly the worst final level. If Halo 2 was a step down from Halo CE's undisputed quality, Halo 3 was the outstretched hand that picked up Halo 2 and body slammed it! You got tighter controls, new enemies, new weapons, new vehicles, next-gen graphics, butthole doors, the Warthog run! Wait, what was that last one? Warthog run? No, before that. Oh, the new graphics. What I really take issue with in this game, though, is Cortana. Both the mission and the way she's presented in the game. These Cortana/Gravemind moments, they bog the pacing of the game down by almost entirely halting your forward progress for either Cortana or the Gravemind to spout some cryptic bullshit about themselves, each other, or the Chief himself. The level Cortana is the one most densely packed with these moments in Halo 3. I mean, it makes sense considering you're pretty much inside the Gravemind the entire level. But what that also basically means is that the entire level looks the same. The pacing of the first half of Cortana makes me want to commit war crimes. You have this hallway section where you'll die over and over again, you have this big room where you have no idea where to go, and between all of that, you're forced to stop and listen to this bullshit you don't care about. It's easily the worst playable section in all of Halo 3. But the second half is pretty good. After rescuing Cortana, hearing the Gravemind say and blowing up a thing, you're launched right into an escape sequence, a genuinely harrowing moment which ends with one of my favorite moments in the game. This moment is made even more memorable by the fact that you're actually in control of Chief when you experience it.
I've got a friendly contact. Who would be crazy enough to come in here?
This game is special. This is a special game. If the Halo trilogy is Thanksgiving dinner, Halo 3 ODST is the food coma afterwards. Just as enjoyable, but for a completely different reason.
Wake up, Buttercup.
ODST is the only game in the series that I think has unquestionably solid showings in terms of levels throughout its own campaign. But I feel obligated to put at least one level from each game in the bottom 10 and the top 10, so here, have Teari Plaza. The issue with this level is that it's way short. like the shortest level in the entire series short. You go down here, find these guys, go through this part, big courtyard, fight hunters, and then that's basically it. This level has one objective, and it's to get to Captain Dare's crash site 3 separate times. It would be just the first section of any other level in any other game. It's a complete waste of Edward Buck, portrayed by the talented and sexy Nathan Fillion, to give him this short of a level. The reason it's no lower though is because it's actually pretty good. It's the one where you find out you get to play as other members of Alpha 9, you face hunters for the first time as an ODST, and you meet a species of alien never before seen in the games. It's not a bad level, and it works in context, but there would be nothing lost story-wise if it were just a cutscene instead. In each of the 2 games where the playable level count is over 10, those games being Halo 2 and Halo 5, there are a few that come off as half a level. Halo 2's Sacred Icon is one of these, with its other half being Quarantine Zone. It's mainly down to the fact that there really isn't much that happens in it, like the 2 previous Halo 2 levels on this list. There's not much that's bad to say about this level, but there also isn't much good to say about it, which is, in my opinion, a bad thing in and of itself. Sacred Icon begins with a cutscene that's better than the actual level, during which the seeds of the Covenant's civil war are planted. The level itself isn't that great, but it's saved by nailing the atmosphere. It's oppressive and isolating, with thick fog hanging in the air. It's dark, but not to the point where it's absurd, which is good because the Covenant never invented flashlights or night vision. There are a few gameplay highlights in Sacred Icon, like fighting this big-ass sentinel by yourself, as well as seeing some incredible views like this one of High Charity and this one of the library toward the end of the level. There are also a couple moments when you can sneak past Flood Sentinel battles and never have to deal with— oh, never mind. Like Uprising though, the level suffers from being by and large uninteresting. It's not a long level by any metric, and the only major story beats it has occur in a cutscene before the level even starts, leading to Sacred Icon feeling overall inconsequential. But, I mean, you do get to slide down these big tubes, so that's fun. Halo 5 really didn't do a good job in the bad guy department. The Warden Eternal as a bad guy isn't all that compelling, and he was really only the bad guy for some of this game. This level, Reunion, is when you find out that Warden isn't only Osiris's enemy, but also Blue Team's. I think the writers just needed a reason for you to fight both Covenant and Forerunner forces in Chiefs levels, which is fine. And if I'm being completely fair, Reunion isn't even that bad of a level. Genesis as a backdrop for this level is beautiful. At the very least, it's visually unlike any other location in the game, and certainly in the entire series. Up till this point, you've only seen and fought against Forerunner Phaetons from a distance, but in this level you actually get to fly them in what's honestly a really entertaining section. You're zooming around, taking out focus turrets while your team takes out infantry on the ground, or you can be down on the footpaths where you get a real physical sense of how massive these caverns are. Also, man cannons are fun. Whee! Having different options for how to approach a level adds a certain amount of replayability, but it's also only one section. The fact that the Warden is constantly talking to you in the section just before it, and the rest of the level isn't that memorable, scores it no extra points. However, it is the first level in which you talk to Cortana, and it's the only time in the entire series that Ollie Ollie Oxenfree is featured in a game.
What was that?
But also the level ends with the most pointless cutscene in the game. Why is it just them walking? Why is their frame rate so low? Why is there no dialogue anywhere? Why does it pan up to the gateway and then just fade out? It's dumb. I don't like it. Level's half decent though. The levels that introduce the Flood in each game of the original trilogy are all memorable for their own unique reasons. In the case of Halo 2's level The Oracle, its memorability has almost nothing to do with the Flood. In fact, the section of the level that deals primarily with the Flood is super lame. It's just 3 arena battles in a row, the one on this slow-ass elevator being particularly egregious. It's not quite Quarantine Zone levels of bullshit, but it's still a ridiculous waste of time. It takes 5.5 minutes for the elevator to go all the way down.
Your death will be quick and painless.
The arena battle that immediately follows is kinda terrible too, but at least the terrain is more varied and you fight both heretics and Flood. The Oracle doesn't get good until you go through this door, at which point the level actually begins. You find the leader of the heretics who you're trying to kill, but he gets away, and then the Arbiter says this.
The cable. I'm going to cut it.
And you're just sitting here like, what? But then you actually go up and do it in the game, and the entire level just... This blew my f***ing mind as a kid. Halo's never done anything quite like that up to this point. And the escape sequence that follows is a lot of fun too. Running all the way back through the station as it's falling is a great alternative to an actual time limit. You're not really being timed, but the level design and the theming gives you the impression that you are. Also, there's a boss fight at the end. It's not great, but it's a first for the series and it doesn't completely suck, so I commend it for that. Honestly, if you can ignore the entire first half of this level, it's actually really good. But I'm not ignoring the first half, so it kinda sucks. In every Bungie Halo game, sometimes you'll revisit locations from previous levels in new levels, but that location will be significantly altered, or you'll approach the level in an entirely different way, or you'll explore a new area that was previously inaccessible. 2 Betrayals barely does any of that. Basically, you just go through a previous level backwards, and this time with no Marine pals. The only new locations you visit are these rooms with the phase pulse generators that you have to disable, and they look pretty much like every other room in this level. The only positive difference I can attribute to this level is that you fight both the Covenant and the Flood, sometimes at the same time, although there are some Flood sections that make me want to murder talk show hosts. In terms of story, you get one of the coolest twists the game has to offer in the first cutscene, and then nothing. I don't want to make this video too lore heavy, but taking out the phase pulse generators is a complete waste of time. Spark cannot fire the Halo without the Index, which Cortana has, or without a human to initiate the firing sequence. Spark's only option for the Index is to make a new one, which takes time, as evidenced by Halo 3, and then he would need to find a human, but there are virtually none left on Halo at this point. Also, why is it called 2 Betrayals? What's the second betrayal? Who else gets betrayed and who does the betraying? Post your answers in the comments below. I'm coming down on this level a lot, but honestly, it's really not that bad. There are some really memorable moments in this level, like being mobbed by sentinels right out of the gate, flying a Banshee through these dark, snowy canyons, and especially this moment. Hell yeah, dude. Ironically, 2 Betrayals would be a much better level without context, but what we have is decent anyway. The first level in each Halo game needs to make an impression on the player. They need to say, hey, this game is cool and worth playing. They also need to drop you right into the story and ease you into the gameplay. Judging based on these criteria, Osiris isn't that good of an intro level. There's enough jaw-dropping spectacle for 3 levels, and enough over-the-top action for that many too. This level is denser than any other opening level in the series, pitting you against almost everything both the Covenant and Forerunners have to throw at you. Like, yeah, I get that this is the 7th game in the franchise, and not many people who have never played a Halo game will be playing this one, but Halo 5 plays significantly differently from even Halo 4. The introduction into this new kind of Halo game needs to be more measured and controlled. Virtually every single enemy and most weapons are present in this level, leaving big surprises for the sandbox's contents all but non-existent. Osiris tries to do too much, and it ends up leaving the level feeling too busy. But it does a fantastic job of matching the energy of the genuinely thrilling cutscene at the beginning. The music in this game is a far cry from what Halo music used to be, but the song that plays at the title splash with those horns blaring the main theme and the chimes accenting each note. That's the the good shit. And despite how much is going on screen at any given time, the action is always really easy to follow as the focus jumps from one member of Osiris to another. At least it's way, way better than the cutscene at the end of the level, which paints elites to be these dumbass, lumbering buffoon pushovers who die in a single headshot. It's not the worst level in the game, it's not even the second worst, but it is the worst first level in the series. Having the worst first and last levels in the same game is not a record you want to have. Halo Reach has a ton of really long levels in it. It makes sense, as the game often takes time for character moments and lengthy dramatic cutscenes. The package has both of these, as well as the game's most time-wasting arena battle, but at least you have these turrets to help you out and a really cool backdrop. At this point, Noble Team has taken a couple of casualties and the Covenant are clearly winning the Battle of Reach. Things have been looking pretty bleak for a couple of levels, but this is the one where humanity's luck seems to be turning around. The package sees you return to Oni Sword Base, supposedly with the mission of destroying it to deny the Covenant any information about, I don't know, stuff. But when you get there, you find out that a senile old woman just wants you to save her baby. Any level that lets you roll through Covenant forces with a Scorpion scores major points with me, so it's cool that this level has that, but it also has a few big issues. This extremely long cutscene right in the middle of the level, and then the aforementioned extremely long arena battle that makes up the entire rest of the level. The package has the same structure as Quarantine Zone, a really entertaining first half with a weak as hell second half crudely spliced onto it. Though it is definitely more fun than Quarantine Zone, and that's really down to the virtue of Halo Reach being a newer, bigger game than Halo 2, but also that this arena battle was specifically designed to be revisited over and over again since it's also a firefight map. Still, it really doesn't change the fact that this level takes too long to get through, cutscenes or not. So you may be asking yourself why I'm ranking a way shorter level that's structured just like the package above the package. Well, it's because I like Mickey.
Son of a gun!
And he's voiced by Alan Tudyk. And it's got a really good song. Kazingo Boulevard is the first level in ODST where you get to interact with another member of your ODS team during gameplay, and it's honestly pretty cool. You get this real sense, unlike any Halo game preceding this one, that you're fighting alongside someone who's your equal. Problem is, the only time you get to fight with them is during an arena battle. So I just realized that I never really explained why I don't like arena battles. Halo's gameplay rhythm thrives on that sense of progression that you get by simply moving from one place to another. That feeling of satisfaction when you finally push through and make it to another amazing set piece or story beat. In most enemy encounters, you're controlling the pace of the game. Arena battles take that and say,
No, I don't think so.
There's virtually no indication of how many enemies there will be, and by extension when the battle will end. You're just locked in an enclosed area until an arbitrary end time. There are a couple instances when an arena battle makes sense from a story perspective, like the one from the package, but what doesn't make sense is when enemies just stop showing up, like in Kazingo Boulevard.
Keep it up, Mickey! We almost got him beat!
How do you know? Not to mention there are times when you can and are even encouraged to just run right past a group of enemies, like this moment in 2 Betrayals. But arena battles completely remove that option, grind the pace of the level to a halt, and say, nuh-uh, this game is now Time Crisis, give quarter. But anyway, this level's alright. Sometimes for this list, I have to rank levels that I like, but are outshined by virtually every other level in the game lower than I would otherwise want to. Tsavo Highway is one of these levels. Nothing in this level is particularly bad, except for this one arena battle right around the middle, which isn't even that bad. There's this pretty fun driving section where you jump and weave through this mysterious wreckage, which you don't even learn the source of until the next game. And then there's the part where there's a huge amount of brutes between you and the very end of the level, and the the game leaves how to approach dealing with them entirely up to you. You can go it alone on foot, or you can bring some Marines with you. You can take a Wraith and just wreck everyone. You can go in all gung-ho or weave in between these barricades for cover and pop out whenever you need to, or you can just die. Savo Highway doesn't really have the best of anything in Halo 3. It's got shooting, it's got driving, it's got set pieces and story, but all 4 of those are better in other levels. Like I said, this level isn't bad. There are just lots of better ones. You know, I tried not to put too many final levels this far down on this list. Usually there are these really awesome moments that wrap up everything the game has been building to, and there are these really sweet-ass set pieces and epic battles and... Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm gonna drive a Scarab! This is gonna be so awesome!
Grab a Banshee and give me some cover. Gonna know what's coming.
Oh. Now, the Great Journey isn't a bad level, but like Guardians, it's just not a very good final level. There is this cool part where you fight alongside hunters, which hasn't been done before or since for some insanely idiotic reason. And there's this part a bit later where you break some elite high counselors and more hunters out of prison. These are really powerful moments where you feel like, as a species, as elites, you have a fighting chance against the Covenant. But these moments are undercut by a few blunders, like this flying part. After shaking off the disappointment of not being able to pilot the Scarab, you're left with this underwhelming Banshee section where you would imagine Johnson would help you, but he really doesn't. And you have to go up against Spectres, whose turrets are complete bogus. Covenant weapons were specifically designed so that you could dodge their projectiles, and they just decided,
not this time.
The problem with fighting against lightning-fast projectiles with really slow ones is that you have to get in close, at which point they're guaranteed to get hits on you. After that, you have this weak-ass final boss in the form of Tartarus, where this is all you need to do to win.
Hey! Oh, how's that feel?
Great Journey is lifted up by those moments where you're roughing it on foot, the fun intro section where you're in a car, just the idea of having a Scarab on your side, and also the fact that this Wraith always spawns upside down. Literally every time. I love it. Now at this point you might want to say to me, hey man, you've been talking about a lot of levels, but when are you going to talk about the level? You know, the level. Just right now, I'm going to talk about it right now. The library received a ton of negative feedback in 2001, and like, I get it, but I still find this level a lot more fun than people say it is. First of all, you get my 2 favorite weapons in the entire series in it, and the atmosphere is laid on thick. This isn't even close to your first time making your way through a Forerunner building, but it's the only one in the game that looks like this, that feels so important. You have no idea what these blue panels are for or why every hallway is enormous, but there's gotta be reasons for that, right? The issues that people have with the library stem from the fact that it's really long, everything kind of looks the same, and it's notoriously hard. And I mean, those people are absolutely right, but I see it as more of a gauntlet, like a challenge in the same vein as a boss rush. This level does have a few arena battles in it, but they don't get on my nerves as much as the ones from, for example, the Oracle. In that level, you just kinda sit there and wait. In the library, you sit there and wait for the monitor to do something apparently helpful. Speaking of, let's talk about the monitor. This is the first level where you interact with him during gameplay, only ever seeing him in a brief cutscene just a bit earlier. 343 Guilty Spark makes this level. He's constantly telling you little factoids about the Flood and berating you for your terrible choice of weapons, while occasionally interjecting with random thoughts and weird humming. You're supposed to think, okay, something's clearly wrong with this guy. When have you ever heard a robot sing besides that one time? Despite the library's reputation, I always have at least a little fun with this level. One of the things that I actually admire about Halo 5 is that despite being the 7th FPS in the series, it still manages to pack a bunch of firsts into its campaign. The level Glast has a couple of those firsts. It's got the first time you get to ride on a space elevator, and it's honestly really cool to see the transition between space and atmosphere in real time. It's also the first time you go to a planet that's been glassed by the Covenant, Meridian, which has a thick layer of
rush to rewrite
covering the ground wherever you go. It's both beautiful and haunting, but that doesn't matter because this level's typical Halo 5 stuff. You just fight a bunch of guys until it's over. Now that's not inherently a bad thing, it just doesn't benefit the level at all. Glast does do this one thing that I like though, where you graduate from running to driving a warthog to driving a scorpion. I always like when a level scales up its combat from beginning to end. It's like an extremely truncated power crawl. It also introduces this interesting new character, Governor Sloan. When you first encounter him, you don't know he's an AI, and he's openly antagonistic to you, but he warms up to you almost immediately, then he's mad again, and then he likes you again. This may seem like poor writing at first, but it's actually very deliberate because in the next fake level you find out he's actually an AI trying to stave off rampancy because he knows the people living on Meridian need an AI to run things. He's a really interesting character, and I wish that Halo 5 did more with him. Glast is emblematic of the Halo 5 campaign as a whole. Fine as it is, but chock full of squandered opportunities. Halo 4 is the only game whose levels aren't in every group of 10, having skipped the 50s. This game's campaign is just really solid, and there are only 2 in my eyes that don't measure up that well. Forerunner is the better of the 2 levels. Its structure is similar to that of Shutdown with 3 distinct sections to the level. The first section is fine, but the other 2 are much more fun as you're making your way through active battlefields sometimes. Forerunner scores points by introducing the Prometheans, who are ultimately kind of boring but are a cool addition nonetheless, Forerunner weapons, which do a fun little animation when you pick them up for the first time, and the Didact, the first and only live Forerunner to appear in the games. It also has this neat little section at the end where you book it in a ghost from Requiem's rapidly destabilizing core. It's the worst vehicle run in the series, but it's still a vehicle run, and I like those. Forerunner's biggest strength, though, is its cutscenes. The one where Didact is revealed is visually striking, and his dialogue suggests an ancient grudge against humanity.
If you haven't mastered even these primitives, then man has not attained the mantle. Your ascendance may yet be prevented.
What ascendance? What's the mantle? Read these books, they're really good. And the final cutscene is a weird but effective way to introduce humanity's most advanced and powerful ship ever. Crash landing on the surface of a planet nobody knows about. It's a good, concise, and implicit communication of just how much of a threat the Didact is at this point. Overall, I think Forerunner's a pretty solid level, even as I find myself skipping it sometimes. You know, it's weird. Despite how much you bounce around the galaxy throughout all the Halo games, you don't often find yourself on any sentient species' homeworld. Out of all the mainline games, only 7 levels take place on Earth. Halo 2's second level, Outskirts, is the first level to put Master Chief there. It has a fantastic opening cutscene in which the Scarab is introduced.
Whoa.
And you find out too late that you're on Pelican Oscar 815, and then a really long arena battle. Like, an excessively long one. It's super boring and super unnecessary, but at least it ends with the game's first hunter encounter. They're basically the same as in Halo CE, except they're noticeably larger. Their weapon is a beam rather than a burst, and you can't kill them in one shot with any weapon. And if you thought that part was annoying, well, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, the end. Jackal snipers are the bane of every Halo 2 legendary playthrough. These guys are straight up broken. There is absolutely no justification for this. But you do get a really fun driving section if you can get past them, which you can't. The Warthog section is a solid highlight for the Halo 2 campaign though. You drive through the tunnels underneath New Mombasa, interrupting Covenant attempts to regroup as you go. Just like the Oracle, Outskirts is a much better level if you can just pretend that the first half doesn't exist. Unfortunately, the first half is absolute bullshit. Halo 2's Legendary mode is indisputably the most difficult in the series, and we have the Jackal snipers to thank for that. I've got a question for you. Do you want to be sad? Do you just want to do something that'll make you real sad? Well, I have just the level for you. It's called New Alexandria, and it's about everyone dying. You get this really dour, depressing opening cutscene before flying around a crumbling city, saving Marines, killing aliens, and taking out signal jammers in various high-rises, and at the end you get another sad cutscene. Despite the overabundance of sad boy hours, this level's actually pretty special. There are 3 major sections to this level, each on different skyscrapers, and while you can't choose the order to do them in, the order may change from playthrough to playthrough. And there are several smaller missions that the game will choose at random for you to do in between each larger mission, and in one of those you actually escort one of the playable characters in ODST and 5, Buck, to an extraction point. It's a nice little moment that's just as much story as it is fan service. New Alexandria ends with you taking out turrets surrounding the Oni building Kat is in, and for some reason she never shuts up about how many turrets there are.
Noble 6, lose those other shade turrets so Pelicans can be counted.
Thank you, yeah. But the atmosphere, man, it's excessively oppressive and objectively effective. Rain pours down in sheets, buildings topple right in front of you, silhouettes of Covenant ships will swoop down, only illuminated by the burning city and their own glassing beams. And you can also make all the Covenant in this club have a dance party. This is a pretty good level. If I hadn't been introduced to Halo at such a young age, I probably wouldn't have had so many nightmares. Thank you, Keys. This level is basically Truth and Reconciliation, but way shorter and way harder. It has a few really memorable moments like the opening cutscene, jumping through a giant hole in the ship into a big puddle of coolant, and the discovery of this level's namesake, Captain Keyes embedded in a proto-grave mine. Today, it kinda looks like dog shit, but you have to remember back when I first played this game, Mario looked like this. Halo was the best looking game I had played up to that point. I used to never play this level because it scared me so much, but now it's only a little bit scary, and I'm a big boy now, so I can play it with the lights off. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Keys. This level's alright. It's the first level where you meet Spec Ops elites and grunts, and that's, it's fun. Also, Chief just straight up punches a hole through Keyes' skull. It's awesome. Honestly, the biggest issue this level suffers from is the infinitely spawning flood. When you're outside the ship, it's not that big of a deal as you have much more room to run around and avoid enemies. But when you're in the cramped hallways of the ship, it's a much more serious problem. For one thing, you're working with a much smaller area, meaning a smaller number of enemies is a bigger deal. And for another, you might not know that the flood spawns infinitely, so you could be stuck at one part trying to wipe out all the enemies in your way, only to end up wasting all your ammo. Despite its issues, Keyes is a solid attempt at a more horror-focused Halo experience, and it's a unique level worth revisiting. Some of my favorite places in the world are natural parks. There's something really special about spending time by yourself or with people in your life, just taking time walking through nature and taking in the sights and the sounds. There's something even specialer about gunning through a national park in a Warthog and blowing up tanks with a laser.
Target down!
Uplift Reserve is a pretty fun level. It's only the second level in the game where you don't play as the rookie, so it's pretty short, but a couple of major events happen in it. Most notably, you see the space elevator collapse, which explains what the big rings in Savo Highway came from. Also, you have this really cool, wide open area where you meet up with a stranded platoon of Marines. This section has the appearance of an arena battle, but you can also just skip it if you want, which I really appreciate. And then a little later on, you can find a couple of guys over here having a funny little conversation.
Listen, Marine, you're wounded. You gotta try and relax. Except we're the zebras.
Aside from those things, though, Uplift Reserve's lack of length works to its detriment. It's fun throughout, but throughout is about the length of Evanescence's Bring Me to Life. There are a few things you can do that will make the level take longer, like spending a lot of time in this area, but when you can beat the level in under 4 minutes without cheating, no matter which way you slice it, it's a short level.
Amen.
Oh boy. So remember when I was talking about Outskirts and I said that the reason Halo 2's Legendary mode was so hard was because of the Jackal Snipers? Well, I wasn't being entirely honest. Yeah, Jackal Snipers are hard, but the hardest level is Gravemind. It starts off with what's probably the most famous cutscene in the entire series.
I am a monument to all your sins.
The writing, the animation, the sound design, and the presentation in this cutscene are some of the best in all of Halo.
Boo.
Then the cutscene ends and the level proceeds to kick the piss out of you. Gravemind is so dense and so varied up to the point where it can get pretty tiring. It's the first level in which you fight brutes, which, to distinguish themselves from elites, are these hulking bastards who take way too long to kill unless you have a needler or land a few headshots. When you kill all but one of them, the last one will rush you until you're dead or it's dead. There is this fun little part where you rescue Marines though. It's my favorite part of the level. Story-wise, Gravemind is one of the most important levels in Halo 2. You spend its duration chasing the Prophet of Truth through High Charity, Halo's answer to the Death Star, and find that brutes and elites are starting to fight each other. What you're witnessing right now is the end of the Covenant as you know it. Making your way through High Charity can jump from breathtaking to twistingly frustrating in a matter of seconds. I hate this part. This level is just too long and stupid hard. Though it is really cool to see locations in gameplay that you've only seen before in cutscenes, like the Mausoleum of the Arbiter and the High Council Chamber. Similar to the library, Gravemind is a test of willpower. It's purely a war of attrition. Halo 3 had a lot riding on it. After the unequivocal successes of Halo CE and Halo 2 on the original Xbox, Halo 3 couldn't just be a good game. It needed to be a worthy successor, a fitting conclusion, and a technical marvel. The first level of Halo 3 needed to prove that this was the game everyone was expecting. Sierra 117 kinda did that. Compared to the first levels of Halo CE and Halo 2, Sierra 117 is much more laid back and reserved. You still kill a ton of aliens and there's a memorable set piece, but the designers opted for easing you into the game rather than just dropping you like a brick, even though you could still probably fly pretty good. This level had to show off the shiny new graphics, and rather than using the human spacecraft approach, you're thrown into an African jungle just outside of an industrial town. This provided the opportunity for multiple beautiful vistas, but also gave the whole level this serene, chill vibe. This level also reintroduced brutes into the series, nerfing them a ton and giving them more distinct appearances, since they were now a total replacement for elites as field commanders. It also cemented the Arbiter as humanity's ally, which was more than suggested at the end of Halo 2, but confirmed at the very beginning of Halo 3. Sierra 117 also showed off some of Halo 3's various new gameplay elements, like consumable equipment and suicide grunts. It's a fun level, it's just a really low energy level, incapable of matching the energy of the Halo 3 campaign as a whole. If there's one thing Halo 5 excels at, it's giving you the impression of being just one small part of an active war zone. I wonder if that's why they made an entire multiplayer mode out of that. Evacuation is comfortably the best level that takes place on Meridian. It's the first time you encounter an active Guardian, which is accompanied by an army of Prometheans. This is one of the rare Halo 5 levels where I think the level design is actually pretty interesting. The first thing you see in this level is the Guardian rising from underground, and you get a real sense of just how massive that thing is. You continue blazing through a landscape that's crumbling around you while evacuation orders and shuttle pilots are blaring in your ear. Then you climb over the wreckage of a Pelican you just saw fall out of the air, and then jump into a short arena battle that turns into a much longer arena battle on the space elevator.
Tanaka, how do we get the elevator moving? Got it.
It's lame, but you do get a bit of exposition and some character moments, including a callback to an event from Halo Reach. Evacuation gets really fun when the elevator stops and you have to make the remainder of your trip to your Pelican on foot. This part is honestly one of the most exciting sequences of the campaign for me. It's just a shame about the arena battles in between these two really exciting moments, as well as where this level falls in the overall story of the game. It's the first hint that AIs will be the main enemies of Halo 5. But I mean, overall, I don't mind coming back to Evacuation. It's alright. Halo 4 has several very long levels on account of its campaign having the smallest number of them out of any Halo game with only 8. The challenge this game faced was to fill them all with enough interesting moments without making them bloated, but still to make the pacing quick enough to keep them from getting boring. Infinity does this cool thing where it gives you a giant mech. That's it. Next level. Come on, let's keep moving. The issue with Infinity is that it has this lame intro sequence where you just run through a dense jungle where you can't see where to go half the time. But then you get to this part where you meet a couple of important characters. One of them is Spartan Commander Sarah Palmer.
I thought you'd be taller.
Oh yeah? Well, I thought you... shit. And the other is the galaxy's greatest human being.
There's our man. There's our man. There's our boy.
I adore Tom Lasky. As far as Navy officers go, he's relatively mild-mannered, but he still cares deeply about the people working under him. What follows this meeting is the first time Halo 4 has you fight alongside NPC allies, and it's pretty refreshing. These Marines aren't as characterful as the ones in the original trilogy, but that's honestly a minor nitpick. Infinity is a good level, but it teeters on the edge of being too long, which is mainly because of its 3 arena battles. The last one is in a Mantis, though, so it's not nearly as bad as the other two. You also get a pretty kick-ass Scorpion section, which marks the first time where you fight alongside other Spartans as the Master Chief. Were it not for the pacing issues, Infinity would easily be one of the best levels in Halo 4. There's always a lot of pressure for the first level of a game to be good. At a time when gritty military shooters were popping up from every conceivable direction, thank you Call of Duty, Halo Reach needed to do something that made it stand out. And it did that by just kind of being better than most of them. Winter Contingency shows you exactly what kind of game Halo Reach is. You interact with every member of Noble Team who barely have a fraction of the chemistry of Alpha 9 from ODST, but make up for it by more believably being military operatives. The Covenant no longer speak any English, distinguishing Reach explicitly from the other games in the series. Everybody makes a big deal out of the fact that the Covenant are here, reminding you that the Covenant have been winning this war for over 25 years.
Contacts. The damn Covenant.
Narratively, Winter Contingency knocks it out of the park. The biggest issue with this level is that it goes on for way too long. This is by far the longest first level in the series, mainly because of some questionable level design. It's bogged down by a pair of back-to-back arena battles, as well as a playable scripted section in the beginning, which, granted, you can just skip by running past everyone. The only other big issue I have with this level is some of the voice acting. With the exceptions of Dr. Halsey and George, Reach has some of the worst voice acting performances in the series.
Mayday, 3 Charlie 6, does anyone read?
I will just never understand why they went with the catatonic approach for voice acting in this game. That being said, every other element of this level's presentation is pretty much spot on. Honestly, it's not hard to like Winter Contingency. The Flood are the scariest when you know what a place used to look like before they got there, especially when that place is Earth. The aptly named level Floodgate wastes no time reintroducing you to the space zombies in glorious 640p. Except this time they're a little more coordinated, they include brutes among their combat forms, and they sometimes talk to you because I guess they can do that now. The decision to have you fight back through the area you went through in the previous level works wonders for Floodgate. That stark contrast in atmosphere and tone makes the industrial zone you just saw almost unrecognizable. This, ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, is what they call mood whiplash. It's a reminder to the player that makes them go, oh right, this isn't about the Covenant, this is about Earth, this is about humanity, this is about every world with sentient life. We cannot let what happened here happen anywhere anywhere else, under any circumstances. And on top of that, there's the reintroduction of Guilty Spark, who's always entertaining, as well as that really engaging cutscene at the end, the first time in the games when elites and humanity are working together to achieve a common goal. Now, I've been heaping nothing but praise on Floodgate, so you might be wondering why it's only ranked 39th on this list. Well, for one thing, the Cortana moments don't help this level at all, and the Cortana bait and switch at the end just straight up makes me mad. I thought I was finally getting Cortana back, but I had to wait another 3 levels for that, and it just so happened to be the worst level in the game. So, hooray. Also, beyond what I described earlier, this level isn't all that interesting. There's the cool moment where the Shadow of Intent gets to Earth and the introduction of pure Flood forms, but in terms of combat, it's just kinda your standard Flood level. Good, but nothing to write home about. Sometimes I wish I could go back and experience Halo CE for the first time again. If I could do that, I would probably put the level Halo way higher up on this list. It was so long ago when I came off that lifeboat for the first time that I can only imagine how mind-blowing it was to see Halo rising up on either side of me and meeting directly above. I wonder how desperate I must have been to learn about what it was, how long it's been here, and what its purpose was. But now I'm a jaded, sad adult and all the intrigue has worn off. I struggled really hard with where to rank Halo, considering just how important it is for the franchise. This is the first time you see Covenant dropships, Banshees, Jackals, Forerunner structures. It's the first time you drive a Warthog. It's the first time Needlers show up, goddammit! The Needler is just brilliant. Having a weapon where you only kinda have to aim is perfect for what is essentially the first double analog stick console shooter. It's also the level with this immortal line.
This cave wouldn't happen to be a natural formation. Yeah. This cave is not a natural formation. Get out of town!
Even something as simple as activating this hard light bridge probably floored me as a kid. But to maintain a modicum of objectivity, I have to step back and think, okay, is a level where almost every enemy encounter is an arena battle really that good of a level? Now, one thing this level does that I appreciate is it lets you complete the last 3 objectives in any order you want. The problem is the last 3 objectives are all arena battles, the one by the giant boulders being especially terrible since it lasts forever and it's easier than the others. At least in one of them, you have to actually go inside the Forerunner building to rescue the Marines. In terms of structure, this level is a standout for mostly the wrong reasons, but if we're talking about presentation, it's one of the best in the series. Speaking of presentation, Genesis. This level throws you straight into the best opening section of any Halo level ever. Did you ever want to be a guy running, falling down the side of a living skyscraper while taking pot shots at robots? You probably didn't, but now you know that you should've. This is the most creative use of a Spartan's enhanced abilities in gameplay that I've ever seen. I know that it's mostly because of the armor, but someone without augmented senses and reflexes almost certainly couldn't make these shots. Now, the Forerunner soldiers have way weaker armor than they do in any other part of the game, and you can tell almost immediately, but chances are you're flying past these guys, and it's likely that you just wouldn't be able to kill any of them if they had regular armor. To help you forget about that though, the game smartly gives you a Scorpion right after you get off the Guardian, just so that it's not immediately noticeable that your weapons are weaker now that you're on the ground again. Also, this level introduces 031 Exuberant Witness, the monitor of Genesis, who's I just love her. She's one of the very few unapologetically enthusiastic characters in the franchise. The category in which Genesis falls short though is its length. It's just too short of a level, especially if you pick up this Saw variant, the Answer, and just absolutely wreck the Warden with it. And I mean, to be fair, I love the Answer. It shoots tiny bombs and makes the double Warden fight here way less annoying than it otherwise would be. But I think this level was intended to take more time than it actually does, if that makes any sense. Still, it's easily the best level that takes place on Genesis. Sometimes in Halo games, there's a moment that they build up to which you can tell is coming. In Halo 3, it's the death of the Prophet of Truth. In Halo Reach, it's getting to the Pillar of Autumn. And in Halo 3 ODST, it's the reunification of Alpha 9. Kikowani Station is the first and only level where you play alongside all the other members of the team, with the exception of the rookie. Unfortunately, they spend almost the entire time in a Phantom, and you, controlling Buck, spend almost the entire time in a Banshee, effectively separating you for the whole level. You still fight alongside each other, but it would be nice if you were, like, actually running through the city with them. That being said, this is one of the most fun Banshee segments in any Halo game. It takes place entirely in the dark, but the addition of the visor in this game makes it more than playable, outlining the tiny infantry units in red and friendlies in green. You also get these engineer recharge stations that are just fun to blow up. It's also the only level in the game, and the last level as of now, where you take down a Scarab, and you can either fight it entirely in the Banshee or jump inside it once you've disabled it and take it down that way. This level also does something smart, where right before the Scarab section, it forces you to get out of your Banshee and fight through one of these tunnels on foot, splitting the level into two distinct sections. Staying in the Banshee the whole level could get pretty boring, so they added a mandatory ground section to break up the monotony. Kikowani Station also provides some of the best banter in ODST, since the whole team's together now.
Well, like the good book says, payback's a bitch.
I don't think it actually says that, Dutch.
I'm paraphrasing, you heathen.
Honestly, if you didn't spend so much time in the Banshee, I'd probably like this level a lot more. One of my biggest pet peeves in sci-fi universes is when entire planets have only one biome. You know, you've got your desert planets, your ice planets, your water planets, entire worlds based around one single biome out of the dozens that Minecraft invented. The level Reclaimer shows that Requiem doesn't have that problem. This level has a distinct visual flair compared to the previous 3 levels, almost entirely taking place in this arid, rocky region, making it a visual standout in Halo 4. This level also introduces 2 new vehicles, one for the Covenant and one for the UNSC. The UNSC get the Mammoth, a giant mobile artillery platform complete with a mini-Mac. This is where you'll be spending a good portion of your time. Operating from this giant rolling base with a massive turret is pretty exhilarating, and using the target designator on those particle cannons and watching them fall to pieces just never gets old. The Covenant, on the other hand, get the Lich, a much less interesting vehicle. It just kinda shows up and then you get inside it and blow it up. Not a bad way to introduce a new vehicle, but a good way to make it seem like not that much of a game changer. This level does have this one really neat section though, where you spend some time sniping, which turns into a full-on frontal assault. The design of the level just kinda naturally funnels you in, forcing you to change up your playstyle. We also just so happen to get 2 of the best cutscenes in the game, the Librarian's history of the Forerunners and the reveal of the Composer, and the ending cutscene where Captain Del Rio gets hungry.
Give me that chip.
Reclaimer's a pretty solid level, but it does go on a bit too long, which seems to be a theme with Halo 4. It's also, for some reason, the most buggy level in the game. Waypoints will spawn over 1 kilometer away, this guy spent too much time at the nightclub in New Alexandria, the Lich will just sometimes not explode after you destroy it, an entire chunk of the level will just refuse to load, forcing you to quit and start from Rally Point Bravo. What this level does right, though, just barely lands it in the top half of my list. Some of the best levels are ones where you can just roll through Covenant forces and give nary a shit about them. ODST has a couple of those levels, but Coastal Highway is the only one that's long enough for it to really feel satisfying. This level has the exact same structure as Kazingo Boulevard, except there's a lot more that goes on in it. First of all, it's the only level in the entire game where you get to play as the Rookie during the day, a symbolic turning point for both Alpha 9 and humanity as a whole. You also get this moment.
Whew. Lord, that thing stinks. Kinda reminds me of like...
After you take out this encampment, the majority of the level takes place on this highway which skirts around the edge of the city, and it provides some fantastic vistas. And destruction vistas. and Windows Vista. You start out on the highway in a Warthog with a standard turret, and then you find a Warthog with a Gauss turret, and finally you get a Scorpion. At the same time, the Covenant starts throwing trickier enemies at you, which is a great way to keep this section from getting stale. Coastal Highway rounds itself off with a substantial arena battle, which isn't great, but it honestly kinda works, especially in the context of the level as a whole. Each wave of enemies is different from the others, and the enemies within each wave are varied enough to hold your attention till the end. It still falls into the trappings of a standard arena battle though, where you're not controlling the pace of the fight, and sometimes you'll lose enemies on the other side of the map. As far as final levels in Halo games go, this isn't one of the better ones, and it's not even close to the best level in the game. Still, it does everything it needs to do, and from a game that had only 2 years of development, I'm happy with what we got. One of the reasons Halo 2 used to be my favorite game in the series was the in-depth look into the Covenant that we got as a result of being able to play as the Arbiter. While he doesn't play much differently at all from Chief, it still felt like a privilege to control one of the most important members of the Covenant. The level named after him, the Arbiter, is a really good start to his half of the campaign, and it's the highest ranking Arbiter level on this list. This level begins with an extremely long cutscene in which your goal for the next 2 levels is outlined. You need to kill the leader of a heretic faction that based itself on a Forerunner gas mine. It's a really good cutscene where you get a window into the Arbiter's own self-loathing.
I am already dead.
I always liked that aspect of his character. It's a cool way to make the player empathize with who is essentially a genocidal warlord. The level itself is really good also. You do have this one pretty egregious arena battle in this hangar, but most of the time you can just blast through the station at your own pace. Then you have this really awesome open section where you fly a Banshee around the entire station searching for the heretic leader. This is my personal favorite Banshee section in the original trilogy. You can either follow the Phantom around to each group of heretics, or you can just straight up skip all that and go directly to the end of the level. It's nice that they let you do that, especially if you're going for the par time. The biggest problem I have with the Arbiter is the same problem I have with a lot of Halo 2 levels. There just isn't that much that goes on in it. A lot of Halo 2's 2-level chunks just feel like one level that was stretched out to take up the same amount of time as 2, and unfortunately this feeling hits the Arbiter's levels way harder than it hits Chief's levels. Even with that though, this is still my favorite Arbiter showing in the game. After Halo reaches relatively slow intro level, the game really needed a level that bumped up the stakes and excitement a few notches. Oni Sword Base does just that, pitting Noble Team against a small army of Covenant immediately. This level moves at a breakneck pace, hardly ever giving you time to breathe. First it's the battle in the courtyard, then it's blowing up wraiths with artillery, then you jump in a Warthog to get various systems up and running again before you loop back around to Sword Base to bully hunters and fight your way up through the facility and blow Covenant out of the sky with a rocket launcher. Holy shit! This level does a lot of stuff right. It doesn't have a wasted second in it. If it were a cut of meat, it would be skinless chicken breast, just no fat on that at all. The problem with meat without fat though is it can get pretty dry. Such is the case with Oni Sword Base. It's a very simple, straightforward level. There aren't many notable set pieces, no real challenging moments, nothing that makes this level more than just the sum of its parts. Though the sum of its parts is still a pretty big number. Oni Sword Base is one of the few levels in the whole series that lets you complete certain objectives in whatever order you want. Granted, you only have 2 options, but still, it's appreciated.
I agree. Go for the gun.
No one asked you, Catherine! It's also the first level in the game in which you encounter hunters, which have been reworked significantly since Halo 3. They're faster and more aggressive, which is a nice upgrade from the lumbering armadillos they used to be. And fighting through Sword Base at the end of the level is genuinely exciting. It also gets major points for having the first in-game appearance of Dr. Halsey, who's been a major character in the books ever since the fall of Reach. I only wish that there were just more of this level. Halo 3's campaign does a lot of really cool stuff. One of my biggest issues with Halo 3 though is that the characters are constantly telling you exactly what to do. Crow's Nest is one of the worst offenders of this.
I need that hangar cleared for evac ASAP.
Follow me, Chief. Get to the barracks. Save those men.
Demon, today you die.
Get back to the ops center. Kill those brutes.
Rearm the bomb.
Okay, fine, I'm working on it! It also starts off with one of my least favorite cutscenes in all of Halo. The voice actors for both Miranda and Truth were changed, for the worse in my opinion, and Miranda says this.
Ma'am, squad leaders are requesting a rally point. Where should they go?
To war.
Truth's character also changes drastically from Halo 2 to Halo 3. Gone are the days of the clever, subtle, conniving Truth, and we're left with this overt, barbaric version of him. It's not a welcome change. It's a good thing the level itself is really fun though.
Come on, sir, I'll show you the way.
It's interesting to see Halo-era Marines camping out in a base that's 600 years out of date. Like most Halo levels, Crow's Nest is very linear, but you frequently revisit places that you've been to in an earlier part of the level, giving the base a real sense of place and tangibility. In the span of a single playthrough of Crow's Nest, you start to understand the layout. The game doesn't need to tell you how to get back to the hangar at the end of the level, you just kinda remember at that point. This level is unique within the Halo 3 campaign for exactly that reason. However, it also comes with a downside. The level is small, one of the smallest in the series. There are no vehicle sections and no grand set pieces, you just kinda run around inside the base. Sprinkle in a couple arena battles and Cortana moments and you have a fairly substantial level, albeit artificially. Though there is this one part toward the end of the level that I adore where you mow down grunts and jackals with plasma turrets while this really chill music plays in the background. It's a special moment and it's a big part of the reason why I like revisiting this level. Even with its shortcomings, Crow's Nest ends up coming together really well. Some levels in Halo games are playgrounds. Giant levels with a bunch of different locales that leave it up to the player to decide how to approach certain obstacles. Assault on the Control Room is one of these levels. It's the exact same location as the level 2 Betrayals, except you're going in the other direction, and you get a Scorpion, even though CE has my least favorite iteration of the tank in any game. The chain gun is wildly inaccurate, and so is the main cannon at longer distances. You can't aim the cannon independently of your movement, and it takes way too long to reload. It's just a ridiculously ineffective tank.
This is bad!
Also, very little actually happens in this level. You just blast through the beginning, meet up with some Marines, forget about those Marines, and then just do the rest of the level. It's really kinda lame. Now forget about all of that, because Assault on the Control Room is actually kind of a jam. I mean, it does get repetitive sometimes with a lot of these rooms looking exactly the same as others, but there's enough variety in enemies, enemy placement, and tools at your disposal to keep it from getting boring. Assault also has the biggest vehicle sandbox in the game, with every single drivable vehicle showing up at least once in it. This level is all about options. You can approach every problem in whatever way you can imagine. There isn't a single arena battle in this level. Nothing is more satisfying or self-gratifying than making it through one of the rooms with all the sleeping grunts without being spotted. And then you have this incredible cutscene at the end that honestly still terrifies me sometimes. The fact that Assault is only 30th on this list should tell you the levels are getting really good now. When I was making this list, I wasn't sure how many Halo 5 levels I should rank above the halfway point. It ended up being 4 because I think they really had something good going with the levels that take place on Sanghelios, and one other level, but we'll get there. Battle of Sinayan is, in my opinion, the worst of the 3, but it's still really good. From a visual standpoint, it's all kinda dark and samey the whole time, but honestly, not much is expected in terms of visual clarity from Halo 5. What this level does really well, though, are the other aspects of its presentation. This is Jul 'Mdama's Covenant Remnant's last stand. This is one of those rare, unequivocal victories for humanity and their allies, and you really get the sense that you're making history in this level. From its explosive opening cutscene to the moment you see this hologram of an elite flickering in front of a collapsed ceiling like he couldn't hold it up anymore, this level packs a serious punch. Battle of Sinayan is split into 3 distinct sections. First, you take out anti-air cannons for the Arbiter's forces, levels, then you fight through the Undercity to reach the Guardian faster, and then you fight through the Guardian's Forerunner defenses. Each section stands out from one another, but they all gel together really well to form a notably solid level. Every time I play this level though, I'm reminded of where the game goes from here. Each of the 3 levels that come after this one has already been on this list. I'm also reminded that this isn't the real Covenant we're fighting. This is a ragtag group of chumps who are desperately clinging to false idols in spite of how the entire galaxy has moved on, and it ends up making the level feel more hollow than it should. But it does have this grunt choir, which is, you know, it's cool. I like that. I said earlier that Halo 3 had a lot to live up to, but honestly, almost every game in the series did. Halo Infinite now has more pressure to be good than any other game had, but before that, I'd say it was Halo 4. As the first numbered game since 2007, Halo 4 needed to have some crazy trick up its sleeve to make it feel worth the wait, and its crazy trick was Requiem. Before you even know where you are, you get that same feeling of awe and mystery making your way through the wreckage of the Forward Unto Dawn and Covenant ships alike, somber music playing in the background, until you're just floored by what you see when you come out of that cave. Just like the beam towers in Halo CE, you have no idea what you're looking at, aside from that it's Forerunner, but you're again struck with the sense that this place is grander and more important than you could have possibly guessed. And then you play the rest of the level, and that's really good too. It's the first time you learn about Cortana's rampancy, establishing one of the main goals of the game. On top of finding out where you are and what you're doing here, you need to help Cortana, and to do that you need to get off this planet as soon as you can. Requiem has enough brilliant vistas and varied locations for half a Halo game. It's a big level, and it takes a long time to get through, but because you don't really know where you are yet, you're constantly on your toes, trying to guess what you might be facing next. This level's big issue though is it's almost too cryptic sometimes. Occasionally something will just be presented to you and you'll feel like it's important, but the game never elaborates, like how this holographic display flickers with this symbol, or how Cortana says this at the end. How did what? Eiffel 65 looking at? But this is honestly a minor complaint in the face of what this level gets right. Requiem's just a good time from start to finish. Halo 3 ODST is structured like a film noir, where the player has to piece together information from clues and flashbacks until eventually everything falls together and you're presented with a clear picture. You get that clear picture in Data Hive, ODST's penultimate level. It's the first time you play as the rookie somewhere other than the streets of New Mombasa, signaling the beginning of the end of the game. Just like Kikowani Station, you almost exclusively need to have the visor on in order to get anything done in this level. It's pretty repetitive for the entire first half, making your way through hallways and jumping down data stacks for anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. There's this police officer guy who joins you for a bit who's way more important than you might seem on your first playthrough. His story is tied to the various terminals you find throughout New Mombasa, and if you find all of them, you unlock a secret ending for his character.
Crime scene. Restricted entry.
Where Data Hive really shines is after you find Captain Dare about halfway through the level. The part where you fight through the drone hive to get to the supercenter is a highlight in a game full of highlights. The drones in this section almost all go down in one shot, which is a bit of a bummer, but it makes sense considering how many there are. The biggest reason this level is as high as it is, though, is this guy. This engineer, called Virgil or Quick to Adjust, is the friendliest little man, and I would absolutely give my life for him. Also, reuniting with Buck at the end of the level is a nice little cherry on top. This is the level where the pieces fit, where all the work each character in the game has done adds up to the best possible resolution. Saving this guy. It's an honor and a privilege. Weirdly, out of the only 4 levels where you face the Flood in Halo 2, just one of those is reserved for the Master Chief. Luckily, it's also the best Flood level in Halo 2. High Charity is about as good of a level as it could possibly be. Not a lot actually happens in it, but it's got some of the best atmosphere in the game. This level evolves visually as you play through it. It starts off relatively clean and bright, but as you progress, you notice that the fog gets thicker, the light gets darker, and these clumps of flood biomass begin to pop up more and more. You hear the voice of truth playing over loudspeakers telling his loyal followers to stay calm while he flees the hopeless fight against the flood in a final ironic blow to the Covenant's holy city. Just like in Gravemind, this level shows you locations you've only seen in cutscenes before, unifying the story and the gameplay even further. High Charity suffers almost by no fault of its own. Dark levels will always be more irritating to get through than bright levels, and this level is more often dark than it is bright. But the darkness is almost a necessity, as it's caused by a flood takeover of High Charity. It also has the same issue as many other Halo 2 levels, where it feels like half a level. Especially coming off of Gravemind, which is an odyssey and a half, High Charity is an especially quick level by comparison. But I mean, I still end up having a good time with this level every time I revisit it. Alright, something full circle, something Halo. Here's Pillar of Autumn from Reach.
You're on your own, Noble. Skip it up.
This is actually a vitally important level for the entire franchise, but especially for Halo's Bungie era. I was joking before, but it really does come full circle. Bungie's final level ends where their first level started. It's just as important for this level to be good as it is for the characters in the level to succeed. Luckily, this level is good. It's really good. It starts off by giving you a direct line of sight to your goal, which is a great touch. Like Assault on the Control Room, this level encourages you to just barrel through it. In this Mongoose section, Emil literally tells you not to stop and fight what's right in front of you. It's sad though, because you don't get to fight a scarab at any other point in the game. Then the pace of the level slows down a ton when you hit this part with the brutes and the wraith, and this annoying section with all the drones. It is super satisfying to make them explode though. Pillar of Autumn doesn't really get good again until you get to this part and hear the voice of the man.
This is Captain Keyes of the Pillar of Autumn.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Then the fight through the dry dock is an absolute blast. Halo is at its best when you're flying through it like a 7-foot-tall, 1,000-pound biologically augmented madman. How they managed to cram so many different encounters into this part without making them feel disjointed is something I'll never understand. Then the level falls flat on its face for an arena battle that really feels like it'll never end. It's harder to judge this level so harshly for having one though, because you are actually trying to clear this landing pad you're on, so it's safe for your dad to pick you up from school. Thank goodness for this final section where you get to fight your way up to a Mac cannon and blow phantoms, banshees, and this thing out of the sky. Yeah, ending a game with a turret section is the best idea, but that's not how this game ends, is it? I'm gonna cheat a little bit and lump Lone Wolf in with the Pillar of Autumn. What a brilliant way to end this game's story. During the process of making this video, I gained a deeper appreciation for each game's campaign, including Halo 5's campaign. I mean, all things considered, it's the only game in the series where you go to Sanghelios. The first level that takes place on the Elite's homeworld, Swords of Sanghelios, instantly rises head and shoulders above every level that took place on Meridian with its incredible visuals. This level is dotted with ancient Sangheli structures, giving an air of sacredness to this place you're only seeing for the first time. It's a stark contrast to the technology that's currently available to both elites and humans, and it's an essential detail that makes Sanghelios feel like a real place with detailed history. Okay, but is the level fun? Short answer? Yes. The physical layout of the level is more interactive than most others in Halo 5. You start out by seeing the place you'll eventually go to a couple levels from now, and later you get a good look at the place you're trying to get to in this level, just like Reach's Pillar of Autumn. What gives this level the edge, though, is the fact that they give you a Mantis for the second half. Sweet baby Jesus, this thing's fun. You can tell right away that 343 really improved the Mantis for this game. Compared to Halo 4, the Mantis is less clunky, it moves and turns faster, and clearly shows missile targets. The only issue is that it no longer displays how much shield it has, which is a really weird decision in my opinion, especially since your shields are never at any risk. Also, the Mantis section is a never-ending barrage of stimuli, which is good, but it teeters on the edge of sensory overload. Besides that, though, there really isn't much else that's wrong with Swords of Sanghelios. It can be easy to get lost in this big open area, but I'd prefer to get lost rather than always be told exactly where to go. You also get this great little moment where Vale says a prayer for dead elites, and Buck says this.
Arbiter's an ally, so these dead here are our brothers as far as I'm concerned.
It's kind of a throwaway moment, but it makes this level stand out to me. Halo needs more interspecies brotherhood moments like this. I think more levels in Halo 5 should have tried to resemble this one. Halo 2 had the unenviable task of following up one of the most revolutionary first-person shooters of all time, and considering just how much cut content there was, it's a miracle that Halo 2 is as good as it is. As the first level where you encounter another Halo, Delta Halo needed to be something special, and it absolutely was. This level was always going to draw comparisons to CE's Halo introduction, so it had to be different enough to set itself apart. So, how do they make it different? By making you feel like you're supposed to be here. You start off with this explosive cutscene where you drop onto the Halo with ODSTs, marking the first time you fight alongside them in gameplay. Then you get this arena battle, which is kinda lame, but they do this cool thing where they play one of the best songs in the game over it. This song, Peril, is one of the most important symbolic elements in the game. It's called Peril, but it's a really understated, laid-back piece of music. It's suggesting that perhaps you are not the one in peril. You've done this all before. This right here, this is your comfort zone. After the arena battle, you spend most of the rest of Delta Halo in a card, just as soon as this Pelican drops it off. Okay, here we go. Now we can—
Saddle up!
God! This part's good because you get the opportunity to drive any and all of the 4 drivable land vehicles in Halo 2 on the same section of the level, making it highly replayable. The tools you have at your disposal in Halo 2, and especially this level, allow you to say, yeah, I know they want me to do this, but what if, instead, I did literally anything else? And I haven't even mentioned the visual design of Delta Halo. While it's similar to Alpha Halo from CE, it instantly distinguishes itself with these mysterious stone structures. It's also much more densely wooded, providing this really moody area, and you get this awesome view of a lake, some Forerunner structures, Regret's flagship, and the giant wall way in the background. If it didn't have the lengthy, annoying arena battle at the beginning, Delta Halo might have been much higher on this list. Some levels on this list were way harder to rank than others. The question it always came down to is, how much fun do I have playing them? One of the greatest philosophers of our time once said, if it's not fun, why bother? Halo 3's final level, Halo, is only fun for about half of it. The first half, where you fight your way up to the control room, is just a slog. Flood will rain down from the sky right in front of you. Every single one of them has a weapon, and despite saying this,
I got you covered, Chief.
Johnson is literally zero help. Also, he can just decide he's had enough of your shit. On harder difficulties, you should expect to spend the bulk of your time on just this part of the level. And that's not even to mention the arena battle you face once you get to the top of the tower.
Have beaten fleets of thousands!
Really? Because I think you just got your ass kicked. Then you actually get inside the control room and the level starts to get good. After Cortana leads you through to the other side of the cliff, you get the moment the entire game has been building up to, Halo 3's Warthog Run. This shit is legendary. Like, this is the kind of thing I'll be telling my grandkids about.
Then I drove off a ramp and fire came up and I was like, whoa.
And the music, the Halo theme with the piano and how it slowly builds as you make progress, and the skybox. I mean, just look at the skybox. They really went above and beyond for this Warthog Run. This level just lets me down in the first half. My first time playing this level, as I was walking through the snowy, barren area before the control room, I actually started to think that I wouldn't be fighting any enemies on this level. And I kinda liked that idea. And I still like that idea. I think it might have been highly controversial, but how incredibly bold of a move would that have been? Maybe I built it up too much in my head, maybe I'm just salty that I was wrong about what the level would be, I don't know. But I think it would have been neat to at least try. Regardless, as a final level for both Halo 3 and the trilogy as a whole, it really, really works. Speaking of the trilogy as a whole, I think it's really fitting that the first and last levels in the trilogy are right next to each other on this list. Halo CE's first level, the Pillar of Autumn, isn't the best first level in the series, but it did everything it needed to do and more. Before this level, before Halo, console shooters were a joke. A mouse and keyboard could do everything that a single analog stick just couldn't. Yeah, GoldenEye was the best console shooter of its time, but you have to remember that bloodletting used to be a thing, alright? Progress gets made and old revelations become obsolete. The Pillar of Autumn showed the world that console shooters were going to be a big part of the future of gaming. Having a moving stick and a looking stick was a literal game changer, which is why they force you to look at colored lights during this level's tutorial. The level then throws you straight into the middle of a battle. You're running through all these corridors, which is forcing you to learn how to move and look at the same time. Then Captain Keyes gives you the undisputed king of pistols. You check out this fun little alien Easter egg, and then you just wipe the floor with these grunts. What an incredible stroke of genius it was to give you the most versatile weapon in the game right off the bat, and then introduced more specialized ones as you progress. You learn that the assault rifle reliably suppresses enemies, even though it doesn't have much killing power on its own. You find out that these big blue guys have energy shields like yours. You pick up this weird alien weapon and you're like, oh, what does this do? Like you're Luke Skywalker looking directly into the lightsaber, and you find out that it absolutely wrecks Elite's energy shields. This entire level is built to prepare you for not just the rest of this game, but also every future console shooter. The only reason this level isn't ranked any higher is because once the game opens up, once you have more knowledge of the game's systems and you're more invested in the story, there are opportunities to make some truly incredible levels. Despite that, Pillar of Autumn is still one of the best and most important tutorial levels ever implemented in a game. Halo 3 ODST took a lot of risks and did a lot of things differently from previous Halo games, and I really appreciate it for that. Ironically though, it's the levels that most resemble the previous games that I like more. Case in point, Oni Alpha Site. This is a loud level. It starts off with one of the biggest explosions in the game and ends with the biggest explosion in the game. And there are plenty of smaller explosions in between. This is the first level in ODST where you play alongside another member of your team the entire time, and they make good use of that fact.
That was a massacre! A slaughter! Man down! A massacre slaughter! Kill!
This is one of the few levels in Halo where you actually have to fall back, which makes sense, and ODST is the closest... An ODST is the closest thing there is to a Spartan, but you're still not a Spartan. Fighting alongside other Marines and police, ducking in and out between these barriers, and with no support from Pelicans or vehicles to boost your firepower, it's a stark reminder that not everyone is a super soldier. Everyone else is just doing the best they can. Then you actually get inside the Oni building and you start kicking the shit out of the Covenant. This is technically an arena battle, but it takes you a while to realize that. Swinging this turret between the entrances, mowing down waves of Covenant, is a ridiculously satisfying power trip you don't often get from this game. Yeah, you might not be a Spartan, but you still use the same tools a Spartan uses, and they're just as effective in your hands. Then once you jump in this elevator, you're swarmed by drones. This is the first and only time you see them before Data Hive, foreshadowing their presence in that level. Finally, once you're up on the roof, there's one last firefight where you do actually get some help. This wouldn't be a particularly special level in any other Halo game, but because it's in this one, and because you accomplish all of this as an ODST, it really sticks with you. It's not often in Halo games when you get a glimpse at what the war is like to ordinary people. In Halo Reach's Exodus, you see firsthand what the war is like to the ordinariest of people. Just people. This level is about doing everything in your power while completely separated from your team to save as many lives as you can. The Exodus in the title is the evacuation of New Alexandria, knowing full well that the Covenant will win the Battle of Reach. Now I know I've just made this level sound like a bad time, but it actually does an amazing job of making you feel like a badass warrior goddess.
Damn, Lieutenant!
You start off by fighting waves of suicide grunts, which is always a lot of fun, and then you fight brutes for the first time in the game. game. And while they're a little more boring than Elites, they're definitely a welcome inclusion and change of pace. This level also has you fight alongside ODSTs in a really fun section where you get a jetpack. You're flying around rooftops and you're killing a bunch of aliens and it feels awesome, and then you get these civilians to safety and you're like, hell yeah, I rule, and then you remember you're still losing. This level ends with you firing missiles at an overhead Covenant Corvette, opening a window of time for a civilian transport to get away. This moment is especially powerful since you just witnessed another civilian transport absolutely eat it. Knowing that you saved the lives of hundreds of people, it's incredibly empowering and a reminder that despite everything, hope still isn't lost. Exodus scores a lot of points for its structure and how its many events are presented. It feels like there's always something new that needs to be done or a new problem that needs to be solved. The main objective of this level, to evacuate civilians, never changes, but you end up having to do it in 3 different ways because that's kinda what real life is like. Problems pop up and tear your original plans to shreds, and then you just kinda have to adapt. You just gotta take life one step at a time, whether you're dealing with workplace issues, mental health, or an extremely hostile alien theological coalition hell-bent on the absolute extinction of your entire species. You know, normal stuff. Now this is interesting. I honestly didn't expect for this level to be so high on this list, but every time I come back to it, I'm always impressed by Halo 4's final level, Midnight. Halo has precious few levels where you pilot a spacecraft. Midnight is one of only 2 such levels, but I'm glad we have them at all. The first section of this level is ridiculously fun. It gives me flashbacks to LEGO Star Wars, which is good because those are the greatest games of all time. You also learn that Tom Lasky became the captain of the Infinity after nobody shared their Pringles with Del Rio. And like, that makes sense. The first thing Fleetcom hears about the return of humanity's greatest soldier happens to also include Del Rio trying to arrest him. Also, the song that plays here, 117, is the best song in the entire game, and I hope it makes a return in a new arrangement in Halo Infinite. The whole first part of this level really feels meticulously crafted to be as awesome as possible. And then after you make your ship into a Jill sandwich, you spend the rest of Midnight on foot. At this point, Cortana is just barely holding herself together with military-grade scotch tape and sheer force of will. The way her rampancy is portrayed in this level is amazing. She uses her condition to her advantage to fight the obstacles in her path by splitting off her rampant personality spikes into the Didact's ship to overwhelm his shields. As someone who lives with mental illnesses, this really resonates with me. It's so refreshing to see someone that's literally breaking down from within use their unique condition in a positive way. This is some of the best characterization I've seen in a video game, period. Midnight also has some of the most impressive visuals in any Halo game to date. The inside of the Didact's ship, the absolute vastness of it, is really effectively portrayed in this moment where you essentially fly to the final location in the level. This part can be extremely frustrating, but that's hardly surprising with it being the final part of the final level in the game. The one thing that really brings this level down is the QuickTime event at the very end. It's honestly hard to find fault in any of the rest of the level. It's an incredible end to the most personal and intimate story ever told in a Halo game. While Halo 4's story was relatively small and focused, Halo 2's was broad and ambitious, and it covered as much of the Halo universe as it could. Regret is one of the few levels in Halo 2 where that actually comes across during gameplay. Your goal is the death of the Prophet of Regret, one of the Covenant's VIPs who's threatening to fire the Halo you just found. Nothing else matters in this level, and its physical layout reinforces that sense of urgency. Regret is a single straight line from the beginning to the end, and it packs enough cool shit in it to hold your attention from the first moment to the last shot of the final cutscene. It directly follows Delta Halo, so you start exactly where that level left off. What makes Regret better than Delta Halo, in my opinion, is its consistent ability to keep you on your toes. First you're fighting through this ancient shrine looking place, then you're fighting Okay, I guess you're not fighting hunters. Then you're on a gondola and the other gondola has Covenant on it. Then you're in the Wonkavator looking at all these submerged buildings. Then you're in this underwater room with this giant hologram and there are snipers and guys with swords and hunters again. And then you're back in the Wonkavator while Cortana dumps exposition on you. Then you gotta fight your way to another gondola, but this time with banshees, and then the entire Covenant fleet shows up. You punch an old man in a wheelchair, Master Chief sprints away from a giant laser and falls into the water, and you're thinking, okay, now we're done. But then D. Bradley Baker comes in with the "This is not your grave." And then you're just left sitting there like, yeah, alright, that was good. Regret is one of those rare levels in Halo 2 that has enough shit happening for it to feel like an entire complete level. You have all these different locations that are strung together seamlessly. This level's length doesn't feel manufactured or artificial, except for a couple moments of forced downtime. You have these massive story moments that prod at your imagination. It's just a solid, straightforward, kick-ass level, and I always enjoy revisiting it. Halo 3 really takes its time, doesn't it? Sierra 117 was a tepid introduction to Halo 3's engine, followed by Crow's Nest, which is a good level but still relatively calm for a Halo game, and then Savo Highway, which didn't do enough with its setting and sandbox to put it even in the top 50 on my list. Then you get to the Storm and you're like, oh, okay, I see what they were doing. The first 3 levels of Halo 3 held back so that the Storm could kick your door down and punch you right in the griff balls. Remember when you were just trying to get past all the Covenant in your way? Well, now you're blowing up all the Covenant in your way. Remember when you were sneaking around in the jungle? Well, now you're killing everything in a giant warehouse. Remember how the biggest thing you faced so far is a Wraith? Well, now... yeah. The Storm is a playground in every sense of the word. There are so many different areas and places to go within those areas. Everything you've faced so far and tons of new stuff, like anti-air wraiths and mongooses show up in this level. It depicts the first time you get a real leg up on the Covenant since the game started. It's broken up into 2 distinct sections, split cleanly by the Scarab fight. The section before and including the fight focuses on vehicle play, and it's some of the best in the game. It also includes a few sections where you're on foot fighting Covenant inside the facility to break up the pacing a bit. And the Scarab fight, you know, driving around it on a mongoose with a Marine on the back shooting rockets at it, it's an endlessly entertaining encounter. The second half of the level is just as good as the first, forging your way through these giant storerooms until you run into your first pair of hunters in the game. Your first time encountering hunters in any of the Halo games is always a special moment, and the way this one is staged makes it stand out to me as one of the better ones. And then the final segment of the level where you fight through the Covenant's last defense of this massive AA gun wraps the Storm up nicely with a little explosion-shaped bow. While the first 3 levels in Halo 3 aren't bad, this is the one where the game remembers it's the big next-gen Halo game, and it really pulls out all the stops for it. Sometimes when I feel like using the thinky bits of my brain, I end up thinking about how well Halo CE handled the reveal of the Flood. The cryptic setup in the ending cutscene of Assault on the Control Room is the perfect primer for what comes immediately after, 343 Guilty Spark. I mean, how genius is this level? Shut up, that was rhetorical. You're dropped off in a dense, dark jungle. You walk past a crashed Pelican and Covenant dropship in a place teeming with life. You see assault rifle fire erupt from a Forerunner facility, and you immediately assume they're the Marines you were sent to rescue, but then you remember Foehammer said the last transmission from Keyes was over 12 hours ago, and now you're like, You journey deeper into the facility and find a Marine terrified out of his mind. He instantly begins firing at you while rambling incoherently about some unknown threat. So you think, damn, well, if there's something that scary here, I'm gonna need more ammo for my pistol. Then you watch this video recorded by one of Keyes' team and find that they were attacked by something they had no hope of winning against. And then, finally, after the game's done savoring all the buildup, the Flood come after you like you're the last roll of toilet paper at Walmart in March 2020. And then you get this, and you're like, yeah, okay, I can do that. Except the entire facility is built like a maze. It was actually designed specifically to keep the Flood in. How cool is that? Well, well, not super cool if this is your first playthrough and you have no idea where you're going, but trust me, you'll appreciate it more on later playthroughs. Once you finally make it out of the facility, you're thrown yet another curveball. You see these weird drones show up and start whooping ass before the level abruptly ends, and you're launched into a cutscene where the man himself shows up, says a couple words, and you're just whisked away like the sweet young damsel you are. You're introduced to 2 new factions in the span of 1 level in a way that feels like a natural continuation of the story without either of them being explicitly mentioned before. Oh, and also you get introduced to the shotgun. It's really no big deal. What a brilliant level this is. The thing that Halo 2 did better than any other game in the series is showing the war from the Covenant's side. I really respect it for that, but my favorite levels are the ones that don't do that at all. Metropolis is an absolute blast. Literally. The level kicks off with Sergeant Johnson giving a speech about rocks or something, which is immediately followed up by one of the most entertaining Scorpion sections in Halo. I mean, yeah, you're just going straight, but you're also absolutely wrecking everyone in your path because they have virtually nothing to hide behind. It helps that Bungie vastly improved the Scorpion from Halo CE to this game. Both the main cannon and the machine gun are far more accurate. You can move in one direction and aim in another, and it takes way less time to fire a new round. The trade-off is that the tank now moves much slower, but it's hardly an issue, especially since it just means that this part lasts longer. After that, you're introduced to another new mechanic, swapping weapons with allies when this Marine gives you a shotgun. Compared to CE's shotgun, Halo 2's feels more like a confetti popper, but that's more of a critique of the game and not the level. After you get out of the tunnel, the game just casually gives you one of the best vehicles in the series, the Gauss Hog. Seriously, this thing instantly improves any level it's in. But the crowning achievement of Metropolis is the Scarab encounter. You watch it absolutely wreck this Scorpion, and then it literally walks right over you. What's hilarious about this moment is that if you don't move Sergeant Banks here out of the way, he will always get killed by this antenna falling over. Every single time. You spend the remainder of the level keeping pace with the Scarab, shooting whatever you can find at the seemingly never-ending stream of infantry pouring out onto the platform on top. Finally, actually jumping onto the Scarab and blasting the piss out of everyone inside was another absolutely mind-blowing moment for me as a wee lad. It's a shame that you couldn't destroy the Scarab in gameplay, but it's honestly not a big deal. You get to do that in the next game anyway. Honestly, the Scarab encounter alone is reason enough to rank this level pretty damn high, but the rest of Metropolis also happens to be a ton of fun. What in the world could I possibly be thinking ranking a Halo 5 level this high? Well, like I said, I actually think Halo 5 is a pretty good game with a decent campaign. It's certainly the worst out of all the Halo games, and Locke has the charisma of an ingrown toenail, but I don't think the game itself is as terrible as the fan base might suggest. Enemy Lines is a shining example of everything Halo 5 got right. At its best, the game really looks fantastic. All the environments are exquisitely detailed, and nowhere is that more apparent than on Sanghelios. Anyway, your goal in this level is to get a Constructor, a cute little Forerunner drone that Dr. Halsey can program to activate the Guardian on Sanghelios, which would then take Osiris to wherever the previous Guardian ended up. But in order to get to it, you have to fight through a bunch of Covenant, and notably, the Kraken. Blasting through Covenant defenses is the most fun it's been so far in this game. You get a fun little ghost section where you're faced almost directly by the Kraken, but there isn't really much you can do about it yet, so you just keep moving on. But then you get to this area, one of the most cleverly designed arenas in the entire game. This ancient building adorned with a massive elite skull draws your eyes directly to the shield in its jaws, clearly marking where you need to go, and then getting there is probably the best part of this level. You can either run right along the top like a Chad, or skulk around in the shadows like a slightly more sneaky Chad. There are so many branching paths and hidden treasures here that all make this section easily one of my favorites in the whole game. Then you have the only negative part of this level, this baffling moment where you're in a room and can't progress until you climb this thing and activate this little elite statue opening the door. What is the point of that? That's not rhetorical, I actually have no idea what the point of that is. It's fine though, because that moment's short-lived and it's followed up by the Kraken fight in Phaetons. I love flying Phaetons, and I love this fight. You'll definitely be getting deja vu as you land on it and travel inside to blow up the core, but I mean, that is the standard blow up a big Covenant thing method. The Kraken doesn't explode like the Scarab, but the way it falls into the abyss while elites celebrate is really dramatic and different enough from the Scarab fight to make it feel like its own thing. Enemy Lines does what only a few other Halo 5 levels manage to do. It makes each playthrough feel significantly different. This level is one of the reasons I don't adamantly detest this game. Halo 4's campaign needed to do a lot right away to make players believe that a fourth numbered Halo game was necessary. After an exceedingly solid trilogy of games and a couple of stellar spin-offs, Halo 4 needed to be able to hold its own against some of the best FPS games of all time. Luckily, its very first level, Dawn, pulled no punches. After a beautifully directed opening cutscene that does everything it needs to, introducing some new threat and reintroducing Cortana and finally the Master Chief, the game wastes no time just letting you play it. After you check up on the ship and do this weird little climby thing in an elevator shaft, you jump right back into fighting the Covenant. At first you might be like, the Covenant? I thought we beat them, but then you remember that Nazis still exist in real life, so some Covenant factions having survived Halo 3 is believable and actually pretty likely. You fight through the forward onto Dawn in a section of the level that feels altogether new but still familiar. Knowing that this is the same way Halo CE started, you get back into the rhythm of barreling down hallways and picking off grunts and gunning down elites. But then the level gives you a much needed hook. Covenant fleet? Fine. Forerunner thing? Got it. But something's wrong with Cortana? Okay, now I'm a full-time simp. Then Dawn does something not enough Halo levels do. It lets you run around in the icy blackness of space. I always appreciate weird locations like this. It's these moments where I really feel like the game is taking full advantage of being set in the Halo universe. And the Covenant fleet framed by the as-yet unknown Forerunner shield world is not only a great view, but a visual metaphor for this game and the series as a whole. Another thing I really appreciate in the level is when things go wrong and you need to improvise, which is exactly what happens when you try to launch this giant missile at the Covenant cruiser overhead. The level ends with this really harrowing sequence that starts when the Forerunner planet identifies you and opens up, drawing everything into it. In a clever juxtaposition from the way Halo CE's first level ends, you're trying to get to a lifeboat to avoid landing on a Forerunner structure. You run through the ship, which is rapidly deteriorating, jumping over gaps and running around Covenant until finally you get to the lifeboats just a bit too late. The last bit of Dawn is this awesome cutscene where you fall through chunks of your ship and Covenant ships until you're finally knocked out by an errant piece of hull. As far as opening levels go, you really can't do much better than Dawn. Tip of the spear! Wham! Pow! Boom! Bam! Oh wait, not that one. What a level, my man! It starts off immediately with a massive battle on a big open plain before you yeet yourself over a bridge and start shooting dudes with a grenade launcher. Then you get in a rocket hog and blow up this anti-air cannon. Then you fight through this mining facility, take out an elite zealot while wraiths are raining plasma on you. Then you get in this thing and take out some other wraiths and hunters and another AA cannon. Then you launch literally infinite grenades from a Falcon at Covenant forces. Then you see this thing and you're like, oh shit, what is that? And then your Falcon plummets out of the sky and then you fight your way to this giant spire, then float up into it in gameplay. Not in a cutscene like in CE, because that game was literally made out of rocks and bones in medieval times. Then you deactivate it and a giant frigate comes and blows it the f*** up and you're like, holy shit, I'm unstoppable. We're unstoppable. That is what Halo Reach excels at more than any other Halo game. Its ability to build you up over the course of a level and then deliver a devastating gut punch, a sobering reminder that humanity's losing. Big time. On top of that, Tip of the Spear is just a stupidly fun level, and an incredibly well-paced one at that. It's a super fast level that takes you to a ton of different locations, but it also knows when to slow down and take its time. You start out on an explosive note, blowing everything up, taking out giant guns, and then you gotta reel it in, you know, just climbing some stairs, picking a few dudes off, and then you're like, BAM! pow, bangeth, and then, you know, just taking some dudes out from a distance, and then you're back up close and personal for the very end. This level is a power trip. Not only are you an objectively cooler guy than the normal Marines, but the gameplay and story beats feed into this as well. For instance, when you fall out of the sky, everyone on your Falcon dies except for you and George. Finally, the whole Spire section sets up the next level perfectly, just like Nightfall set up this one and the package set up the Pillar of Autumn. Tip of the Spear is so fun, so bombastic, so spectacular that it could easily be anyone else's #1 pick. Catharsis, when it's presented to the player at just the right moment after the perfect amount of buildup, can be a sharp tool. Sometimes it can fall a little flat. Other times, like in ODST's A Bunch of Letters level, it's played to a deeply satisfying effect. NMPD HQ starts out with the Covenant screwing up your plans yet again and a very clear description of what your goal is. Also, just a great little detail here, Romeo, the playable character in this level, fires 3 shots from a sniper rifle, and when you get to play, 3 rounds are missing from the magazine. It's this attention to detail that makes ODST stand out from the other games in the series to me. This is the level that made me enjoy sniping. Every time I played a level that gives you a sniper rifle, I would always ditch it as soon as possible for a mid-range weapon. This level, though, makes using a sniper rifle a ton of fun. It's really exciting to try to get the first shot in on a group of enemies before they realize you're there, and then try to pick them off as soon as possible before they overwhelm you. Bungie pulled a genius move by putting jetpack brutes in this level. Jetpack brutes in particular are a great enemy type to use the sniper against. They're fast and mobile, but they move on these predetermined arcs, giving you ample opportunities to take a shot at them. Killing a jetpack brute in the air with a sniper rifle is basically a rite of passage. There are also a couple parts where you have these fun little sniper duels, but the part where you have to make your way up through a courtyard watched over by jackals with carbines is the most exciting of these. They don't do too much damage to you, but their rate of fire is faster than yours and they can de-scope you, making it crucial that you don't get hit here. And then just before you get to the last part of the level, you have this part against a sea of grunts and jackals backed up by a troop of brutes that'll drain your ammo like a thing that drains your ammo fast. But that's okay, because the decision to drain your ammo here is very intentional. After running across this bridge, you finally get reunited with the rest of your team. Now remember when I mentioned Catharsis earlier? Well, how about a part where you blow Banshees and Phantoms out of the sky with a rocket turret that has infinite ammo? Or a Spartan laser? Or a rocket launcher? Or a regular turret with infinite ammo? This is the moment that every previous level has been building toward. It's an arena battle, but this one gets a pass. Considering the combination of the location, its story importance, the tools at your disposal, and the absolute banger playing in the background, this is one of those arena battles that you kinda want to keep going by the end. But just like in Halo Reach, the final cutscene reminds you of how vulnerable you actually are. It's a great way to ground this moment when what came before was kinda surreal, honestly. As the level where Alpha 9 gets reunited, I don't think they could have done any better. Halo 3 has 4 fewer playable levels than Halo 2 did, which means it needed to do more per level for it to seem just as substantial. Halo 3 managed that brilliantly, and one of the best levels at jamming as much as it possibly could into it is the Ark. This level is the first 4 levels of Halo CE all in one. You start out by escaping a space battle, proceed to explore a Forerunner thing while rescuing stranded Marines, then save the commander of your ship, and finally discover the map room. I mean, that's a very simple simple way to put it, and there are a lot of big differences. For instance, the horizon on the Ark looks different from anywhere before or since, and you're much better equipped to deal with the Covenant threat this time around, having a functional ship and elites as your allies. Also, this area of the Ark is unlike anywhere you've been before. It maintains the vast rocky desert aesthetic throughout, but they still manage to pack a huge amount of variety into this level. You start out hopping from Covenant outpost to Covenant outpost, sniping brutes and jackals and occasionally a hunter or two. Then you see this longsword fall out of the air and it crashes in the distance, and you jump in some prowlers that you blow up with a rocket launcher and drive past the wreckage of that longsword. It's a cool little moment that rewards players for actively paying attention to what's going on around them. Then, after fighting across this platform here, you turn around and get to a potential LZ for the Forward Unto Dawn. Once you clear out the Covenant occupying force, you get what is absolutely the crowning achievement of this level.
Is the Dawn rated for atmosphere?
Guess we're gonna find out. Take cover.
Gandalf, what do you think about that?
It's quite cool.
I mean, the way it blows everything back and the music with the violins going crazy with the arpeggios and the fact that it happens during gameplay and not in a cutscene, it's just incredible. Literally, how do you follow that up? Well, how about with the best iteration of the Scorpion in the entire series? It keeps all the positive changes made between Halo CE and 2, but makes it faster and separates the chain gun from the main cannon, making it a more versatile close-range defense tool. After that really entertaining section where Alan Tudyk talks over everyone, you enter the door you couldn't get through before, help some old ladies across the street, and then you come out into this— oh my god! Okay, we're good. Remember when I said a Gauss Hog instantly improves every level it's in? How about you drive a Gauss Hog around a big open area blowing up wraiths and taking out a scarab while choppers and banshees come after you? Oh, you thought that was fun and that was the end of the level maybe? Well, how about another entire section of the level where you fight your way through the cartographer facility and find a visually stunning map room? Or okay, how about another part of the level where you have to escape the map room and fight a brute chieftain whose fight can go in one of 3 different ways. You can either catch him in this room and take him out before he runs away, face him with his jetpack brutes backing him up, or fight him one-on-one while his jetpack brutes watch. Like, I bet you didn't even know that could happen. How cool is that you can still learn new things about a 14-year-old super popular game? The Ark is one of those levels where you just don't care how long it is because it's constantly changing itself up, keeping you eager to find out what's coming next. This level rules. A Halo 5 level? In the top 10? Go back to Fortnite and play some more Fortnite, you baby, because you are an infant and your brain looks like this, I hear you say. To which I say, guess what? You can make your own list and put all the Halo 5 levels at the very bottom. You can ignore Halo 5 completely. I don't care, just as long as you don't tell me or anyone else that they're wrong for liking what they like. And I like Blue Team. I like it a lot. I would even go so far as to say it's number 8 in my top 10 favorite Halo levels. It starts off with a cutscene that's honestly pretty weak, but it does a good job of catching you up on how Chief's been doing since Halo 4. Spoiler alert, he's sad. The weak part is here when this elite goes,
"Throw the envoy out the airlock."
And like no elite has talked or walked like that ever. I mean, look at how he walks. It looks so unnatural, but it's fine. It's over in an instant. Your goal is to take back this Oni research station, Argent Moon, from the Covenant. This level absolutely nails its presentation. Everything from the half-built ship stretching into the distance to the skeletons mysteriously strewn about fits together to make this one of the most visually unique levels in Halo 5. Blue Team starts out fairly simply. You're just clearing out the Covenant and trying to reach Argent Argent Moon's central control room to quickly kill all the aliens on the station by deactivating life support and gravity. You get there by going through the assembly bay, which is where the half-built ship is, and honestly, it's one of the most fun sections in the whole game. From how you burst through that barrier and plunge straight into the bay to all the different platforms and scaffolding that all feel like they at one point had a purpose, it is a visual smorgasbord. There's a ton of different ways this battle can go too, because there are so many branching paths and hidden weapons that no two playthroughs of this part can be the same. Then you get jump scared by a hunter and you fall down into the bottomless pit from that Gravity Falls episode and have a weird dream that sets up Halo 5's story. This is back when I was still optimistic about the story, so I won't knock too many points off for it. Now we're in the second half of the level, which is almost solely why it belongs in the top 10. After that hunter complication, you now have to make your way through these maintenance hallways in a section that gives me flashbacks to Halo CE. Then you have this cool hunter moment where you actually see the individual little wormy worms crawl into the armor and lift it up. Hunters are actually pretty interesting in this game. They have a new attack, these little plasma darts, which are fun, but also once you kill one of them, the other one goes berserk, adding an extra layer of challenge to an encounter that's occurred a million times since the first game. Here's where things start to get really spicy though. When a Covenant fleet shows up, you decide to blow up the Argent Moon by overloading the station's reactor, but once you do that, it takes the reactor to a cooling station to stabilize it as a failsafe, so you jump in a Banshee and blow up the cooling vents, but you can't escape the impending explosion in a Banshee, so you call your Pelican, but it was destroyed, so you run back inside and fight a Prowler, but it doesn't have fuel, so you start filling it up and you keep getting attacked by the Covenant and you finally get away just as the station explodes. Blue Team is a fantastically dense level with so many different scenarios. It gives you this sense that you're on a mission that only Spartans are suited for. On a mission like this, nothing goes as smoothly as you'd expect. There will always be random elements that are completely unpredictable, and you just have to improvise, which is exactly what happens in this level. The Sanghelios missions might be more memorable to most people, but I think Blue Team is the absolute best that Halo 5 has to offer. So Halo CE came out and it was an insane hit. It was one of the best FPS games in 2001 and it still is now. How do you follow up such a revolutionary, explosive, exciting runaway success as that? By fucking throwing Master Chief into space with a giant bomb that he kicks into a ship before landing on top of another ship, like, what? Cairo Station rules. Real quick, let's break down what you learn about the Covenant in the first 5 minutes of this game. 1, they have a big mushroom and a massive fleet. 2, they worship Halo, and I mean, don't we all? 3, they're led by these wrinkly old ball bags called prophets. 4, their goal is to initiate something called the Great Journey, which is tied to Halo somehow. And 5, brutes are here too, and they seemingly get pleasure from elite screwing up. Before Cairo Station even begins, there's already so much more depth and personality given to a previously faceless enemy faction. This is the Covenant's first engagement with Earth, and I love the direction they went with it. It kicks right off with an amazing cutscene that juxtaposes Lord Hood's award ceremony with pre-Arbiter Thel's public humiliation. This is when you begin to understand the scope of the religious fanaticism that pervades the Covenant. The first bit of actual gameplay has you running to a fortified position as Covenant cut through some blast doors and pour in after the explosion, and just like that, you're immediately on the offensive. You rush through that door, clearing out wave after wave of Covenant soldiers, and then you're thrown into this big room with these giant windows that look out into space. This part is an arena battle, but it's not too long, and it's very clear when it's over, because when it's over, this happens. And now, you have motivation. You head to another big room to do it all again, but in this one, the Covenant already have a firm hold here, so it's more like you're taking it back from them. Then another orbital station blows up, and you're like, okay, I think I see the pattern here. Then this guy who berated you for literally saving the galaxy dies.
Get the hell out of my armory, Split! Oh!
And you fight through another one of those planty rooms, which the Covenant have again firmly established themselves in. It's fun, but it's accompanied by this almost melancholy name-calling music, as if to say, like, you may be winning now, but it really doesn't matter. Like, this is it. The Covenant have found Earth, humanity's last great stronghold. This is kind of a big deal, and there's a good chance that you're not going to win. It's really depressing. But none of that matters because you can go outside? In space? And jetpack elites, that's cool, whatever. But seriously, this is an awesome moment. The music goes all synthy on you, and all sounds not directly inside your head are muffled, adding to the atmosphere that's already exceedingly solid. And like, that's all great, but where this level really says, hey, you know you're playing Halo 2, right? Is this part where you ride the elevator down in front of this giant window and you can see the enormous mass driver that makes up half of Cairo Station. Also, drones are a complete piece of shit, or kind of fun, depending on who you ask. At the bottom of the elevator ride, you pass through an airlock that'll spit you out right on top of the external mechanism of the cannon, and it's like, what? Like, this is the same kind of feeling I get from running down the Guardian in Halo 5. The last part of the level is just killing some elites, which is like, whatever, that's my job. But it's the cutscene that comes after that really sticks with you. There's just iconic moment after iconic moment here.
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
I know what you're thinking, and it's crazy.
So, stay here.
Unfortunately for us both, I like crazy. Just one question. What if you miss?
I won't.
I mean, it's just amazing how much good shit they crammed into this one cutscene. Cairo Station is Halo CE's Pillar of Autumn cranked up to 11 billion. This level kicks so much ass. Every time I replay Halo CE, I'm always amazed by how much it got right and how many series staples it established right off the bat. There's one element that Halo CE captures, though, that no other game in the series has been able to come even close to replicating. Mystery. The game drip feeds you information over the course of the campaign. The silent cartographer occurs at a perfect point in the game, right after you find out that Halo is a weapon. What kind of weapon? No idea. Probably a sword or something. Before you know anything about the Flood or the Forerunners and you're faced with the extinction of humanity, of course your mission would be to find Halo's control center and use Halo against the Covenant. This level is like that part in Knives Out where you see how Harlan Thrombey dies, so you think you have all the pieces of the mystery, but you're also only halfway through the movie, so you're like, okay, there's gotta be something else going on. Cartographer is the 4th level out of 10, and it comes right after you rescue Captain Keyes from the Covenant. You're feeling good, you're feeling strong, and you're thinking like, okay, yeah, I got this. I think I've got a good handle on what the rest of the game will be like. But anyway, let's talk about the actual level. You start off with this really awesome moment where you drop onto this beach with the Halo theme blaring in the background and Foehammer and your Marine pals egging you on to just absolutely wreck house. You never stop moving forward, landing headshots on grunts and tearing through elite shields like the unstoppable tsunami of destruction that you are. Or you could just not do any of that. You can literally just turn around right at the beginning and still progress through the level. Music and voice line cues might be a little messed up, but this level still gives you that option. This is the most open-ended level in the entire series. So far, The entire island is loaded in the whole time you're outside, making for some really seamless exploration opportunities. Okay, but let's pretend that you did what the level wanted you to do when you kill all the Covenant on the beach. Foehammer reminds you that she used to be a driver for Pizza Hut.
You know our motto, we deliver.
And then she gives you her old car, so generous. You drive around for a little bit, running over some dudes, and come across the building that houses the map room, only to find that the Covenant have locked the doors. Or you can just drive right past it and go straight to the security station. The game even anticipates the player making this choice. Cortana has 2 different voice lines for when you find the security station, depending on whether or not you go to the map facility first. It always makes you feel special when a game acknowledges that you, the player, have the freedom to do whatever you want, especially in a game as linear as Halo. The great thing too is that if you play the level in the way the game suggests that you do, it's still a fantastic level. This is one of the most hunter-dense levels levels in the series having 4 separate hunter encounters in it. Now that could potentially get old, but this is also the first level where you have the pistol when fighting hunters, and for some unexplained reason you can do this. It doesn't make any sense, but it's ungodly satisfying. And I haven't even talked about going into the map facility. This is one of the first times in the series that you delve deep into an important Forerunner facility, and it leaves a real impression on you. The building itself is nothing too special, and it's topped in terms of layout and presentation in later games, but it still exhibits the trademark grandeur and style of Forerunner architecture. Everyone remembers how they felt the first time they saw this cutscene. For only the 4th level in the franchise, Silent Cartographer set the bar ridiculously high for every level to come after. If this is the template for Halo Infinite, it'll be the best Halo yet. Okay, top 5. Here we go. Each level is from a different game, each is the best level in their respective game, and each is hugely different from one another. They each have some ridiculous, amazing, unique quality or feature that elevates them beyond your standard Halo level. And we're starting off unbelievably strong with the best level from Halo Reach, Long Night of Solace. This level comes directly at the midpoint of Halo Reach's campaign, with 4 levels before it and 4 levels after it. This is the turning point, the moment that decides the future of Reach. It starts off with Noble 2, Kat, telling Carter a completely bonkers plan to fly a slipspace drive into the Covenant supercarrier for which this level is named and activate it, effectively teleporting half the ship into oblivion. It's the longest of long shots, virtually impossible, something that's never been attempted or even thought of before. This level is about how you do it anyway. Now you're in for lots of cutscenes since there's a ton of transitions and elements to this mission that can't be effectively conveyed through gameplay, which is either a good thing or a bad thing depending on how long you want to spend on this level. It can feel pretty short when skipping the cutscenes, but it also might seem a bit too long with them. What matters is that first playthrough though, where the cutscenes are necessary, and thankfully they're all really, really good. But I digress. The level properly starts with a moment that resembles the start of Silent Cartographer, but with a little more going on. There are more enemies, more weapons, some guys come in from drop pods, you've got the launch facility looming in the background. It's the best kind of evolution. It takes a previously established idea and makes it bigger and better without getting stupid. There's a little bit of build up to something as you make your way through the facility, then you see the blast shield raise and you're like, oh yeah! Like, why did it take Bungie 5 games to make space combat? You see longswords in the first cutscene of the first game, and they waited 9 years to let you fly a plane in space and shoot other guys in space planes? Tell you what though, it was absolutely worth the wait because flying the Saber is amazing. I mean, you might as well be flying an X-Wing. The Saber is fast and nimble, but sturdy and powerful enough to take out waves of Banshees, Seraphs, and Phantoms. Not to mention the view, the way Reach extends and curves below you with an extremely unrealistic depiction of space above. It's really unlike anything ever seen before in Halo. And seeing the Long Night of Solace in the distance when you finally catch up to the Corvette you're trying to hijack is beautiful. I mean, it had to be there to complete the scene, but still, Covenant ship designs are just mwah. Then, after you fight off some more airplanes and kill the Corvette's engines, you land on a conveniently 4 Saber-sized landing platform and head inside. This part's a lot of fun too. While Halo CE's Truth and Reconciliation sequence was you quickly getting in and out of a disabled Covenant ship, Long Night of Solace sees you take over a smaller ship that's still in space. After clearing out the hangar so George can land the Pelican with the slipspace drive in the Corvette, you start heading to the bridge and see this happen to the UNSC Savannah, the frigate providing cover for you. That's a real bummer, so after you kill everyone on the bridge, you decide to kill everyone else on the ship because lol. Now all of this makes for a really good level, even with the arena battle at the end, which actually kinda makes sense in this context. Of course everyone on the ship would try to kill you, and of course the ship would run out of Covenant at some point. So yeah, it's a phenomenal level, but what really puts this level at number 5 is the cutscene at the end. You're literally thrown out of the ship, George dies to finish the mission, and then, almost instantly, it proves to be all for nothing. All that you can do is watch, literally helpless, as the end begins. Who knew a game about space army guys shooting aliens could make you so emo? Halo 3's campaign has a lot of problems. There are huge, glaring oversights over the course of the narrative, there are constant reminders for things that are absurdly obvious, there's cryptic dialogue in virtually every level, and opportunities for more focused storytelling are passed over for moments of ridiculous melodrama. Halo 3's 7th level, the Covenant, has all of these. And it's the best level in the game. So let's go down the list. A huge glaring oversight, the Flood literally just gave up on Earth. It put all its cards on the Ark, even though it clearly had the ability to send ships wherever it wanted. Constant reminder.
Spark believes Truth can activate the rings at any time. If he does, Earth, every being in the galaxy, Halo will kill them all. Get to the first tower. Shut it down.
I hate you. Cryptic dialogue. This level's 2 Cortana moments are weird and dumb, just like the rest of them. And also, characters keep alluding to how humans are descendants of Forerunners, which is objectively false but also sorta true in a not true way. Ridiculous melodrama. Everything that takes place in the Citadel. Halo CE and Halo 2 did a great job of not making too big of a deal out of anything. Halo 3 threw all of that out the window with its giant gestures and cataclysmic consequences, and it all comes to a head in this one part of the game. I'm sure that this cutscene would have been cool if I'd seen it when I was 12, but it just comes off as super weak now. It really hasn't aged well. Somehow though, the Covenant is amazing in spite of all of that. You know how a lot of beautiful pieces of art have stupidly ornate frames around them? The level is the artwork and all the dumb stuff is the frame. It really doesn't need to be there, but I'm kinda glad it is. But anyway, let's talk about the artwork. We have an opening that's, again, a lot like the Silent Cartographer, except you have a big laser this time, which is always a good thing to have in a level. After you clean up the neighborhood, you jump in a car and drive up a big hill to your primary objective, the first generator for the barrier that you need to deactivate. There's a scuffle right here before you actually get into the building, and it's pretty memorable. You have a Wraith, these prowlers that come after you, and there's a turret in this tunnel that you can just... Now, the generator building itself isn't the most impressive Forerunner structure in this game, or even in this level, but what sets it apart is this long, dramatic elevator ride up to the top that puts you behind a very conveniently placed glass wall, so you can see exactly what you're dealing with once you get to the top. The fight here is cool because it's small and enclosed, but there's a lot of depth to this room, and just enough places to hide, so you can duck in and out of a safe space, or try to push forward incrementally. So you deactivate the generator, and Arbiter deactivates his, but Johnson's a little bitch, so you have to go do his work for him. And this is where the level says, here, have this, go crazy, sport. The Hornet is awesome. It's bulkier than the Banshee and lighter than the Falcon, but it's plenty nimble, with enough firepower to carve out a comfortable niche for itself in the vehicle sandbox. This dogfight with the music playing in the background would be the best moment in any other level, but there's still so much left to do in this one. So blah blah blah, hum-de-dum, you deactivate the tower, and then... Uh-oh, Billy! So now you have both the Covenant and the Flood to deal with, a development that adds an extra layer of urgency to a situation where you're already rapidly running out of time. After zooming past Covenant forces, you jump back in a Hornet, and the moment after, this happens.
I count 2 Scarabs! Repeat, 2 Scarabs!
See, this is how you do a recurring boss fight without it getting old. The first time you fought a Scarab, it was with mongoose and rockets on annoying terrain. The second time you had choppers, Gauss hogs, and scorpions you could use on a nice flat stretch. This time, when fighting 2 Scarabs at the same time, you're more prepared than ever, and you have more tools than ever, including one that laughs at gravity.
Gravity.
I mean, it's just an utter stroke of genius. So now, you're probably thinking the level's over, right? No, you idiot! The Prophet of Truth is still alive, dummy! Melodramatic cutscenes aside, this section inside the Citadel is amazing. The set dressing here is so good. It's just a straight line from the beginning to the end, which is perfect for this part of the level and the story as a whole. You're completely out of time, the Flood are on your side, and Truth has nowhere left to run. And finally, after doing what you came here for, you discovered the Ark's true purpose. The Covenant is absurdly dense, varied, and fun from start to finish. It kicks you in the crotch and punches you in the face and then pays for your trip to the ICU. This level is Halo. Halo's range of quality for its final levels is ludicrously wide. You have everything from duds like Halo 5's Guardians and Halo 2's Great Journey to home runs like Halo 3's Halo and Halo 4's Midnight. ODST and Reach also had pretty good final levels, but none of them, in my humble opinion, have been able to match the pure, concentrated magic of Halo CE's final level, the Maw. There are lots of reasons why this level's amazing, so let's start out with the obvious stuff. First, the level begins with that beautiful sweeping shot of the Pillar of Autumn, now not much more than a graveyard. And you know, you've got the music, the Gregorian voices intertwining with each other, building a melody that's equal parts somber, hopeful, and reverent. A perfect way to kick off the final level of this revolutionary game. Second, how the Autumn has changed since the first level is jarring. It feels almost haunted, forbidding, full of ghosts and enemies, which leads very nicely into the third cool thing. This is one of 2 levels in Halo CE where you fight all 3 enemy factions, the Covenant, the Flood, and the Monitor's Sentinels. Throughout the level, you see each of them fighting the other 2 at some point. I've always really appreciated when NPCs fight each other in a game. It adds a certain depth to the world that you don't get when you're the only enemy of the people you're fighting. Fourth, your mission in this level is the most insane and awesome thing you do in the whole game. Basically, you gotta blow up the Autumn to destroy Halo to keep anyone from using it. What's great about this level's structure, though, is that they knew it wouldn't be interesting if you just went in, started the self-destruct sequence, and got out. So they take your Banshee from you at the very beginning, and Guilty Spark throws a monkey in your... throws a monkey? Guilty Spark throws a monkey. He throws a monkey wrench into your plans by deactivating the self-destruct sequence right as it starts. So you come up with a new plan. Shoot the engine in the face with a rocket launcher because obviously that's gonna work perfectly. Upon completing this, you get the 5th cool thing, the Warthog Run. I actually prefer this one to the Halo 3 Warthog Run for one simple reason. You can always see where you're going. Errant gaps will sometimes appear in the Halo 3 Warthog Run that you don't notice until it's too late, and the fact that there are bottomless pits at all in Halo 3's Warthog Run is a questionable choice to me because they completely halt your forward progress. It's kinda hard to maintain your momentum when you're plummeting through a hole that you just couldn't see! The Maw's Warthog Run, granted, is a little less atmospheric, a little more straightforward, but still fun as hell. It's kinda structured like a 2D Sonic level, where if you mess up, you can still move forward, just maybe on a less convenient path. I don't like time limits in games, but this one is extraordinarily lenient, especially if you know what you're doing here. Now let's move on to the less obvious cool shit, starting with the symbolism. The Maw takes place entirely on the Pillar of Autumn, which is also entirely where the first level took place. Now check this out. Keys, the 9th level, takes place where the 3rd level took place, the Truth and Reconciliation, and Two Betrayals, the 8th, takes place where the 5th level took place, the canyons around the control room. Throughout each of the last 3 levels, you're heading backwards through the first half of the campaign, signifying that the end is at the beginning. It's the same thing that Halo 3 did, but a little less heavy-handedly. Another bit of symbolism comes from the Halo and the Autumn themselves. The destruction of the Autumn to destroy the Halo acts as a little allegory for the firing of the Halo rings 10,000 years ago. Both were done to ensure the survival of the galaxy, both resulted in a massive loss of life, and both were reactions to an outbreak of the Flood. Also, both were ethically questionable. If you look at the Autumn as representing the Halo array and the Halo as representing the galaxy, it really starts to fall into place. And now, the second non-obvious thing I love about this level. Canonically, it doesn't fit in the Pillar of Autumn. Like, it physically does not fit. It is too big. The first nav point for the Warthog run is over 2 kilometers away, and the ship is barely over 1 kilometer, and then you have an added kilometer for the second nav point. On top of that, everything else in this level doesn't line up with the interior of the ship. Where is this? Where is External Access Junction 4C? You've been driving for 3 kilometers and you fly out of the middle of the ship at the end? What? It makes zero sense. But honestly, it doesn't matter. Just like the Covenant, the Maw's ridiculousness can be easily overlooked. It really doesn't make a difference how big the ship is canonically compared to what's actually in the level, because you're having too much fun to care. Knowing that the level is way bigger than is physically possible just makes it hilarious to me. I tried to think of something bad to say about the Maw when writing this script, but I really couldn't come up with anything. It's fun, it's memorable, it's over the top, it's paced perfectly. It's just amazing. Okay, so one thing I love about each of the Halo games is that they don't step on each other's toes. Every single game has its own flair and identifying features, but still sticks to the same core principles. No campaign is like another. Each one has a distinct appearance, takes you to different places, gives you different weapons, lets you control different vehicles, and delights you with new characters. But what stands out above all those characteristics is each game's narrative theme. Halo CE's is mystery, Halo 2's is manipulation, Halo 3's is catharsis. The number 2 spot on this list is the single best level in all of Halo at conveying the theme of its game, and that theme is humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, Halo 4's composer. I'm never gonna get over this level. This is harmonic convergence. This is where playing Halo becomes a spiritual experience. It starts out with an introduction to a new character, Dr. Sandy Tilson, who you're immediately endeared to by being an instantly relatable character.
This is Sandy Tilson of Ivanov Station. We're under attack!
Her voice actor, Adrienne Barbeau, does an amazing job of making her seem like A, a normal person, and B, she has no idea what's going on. Then, after Cortana crashes your hijacked Lich after a fit of rampancy, you get right into the action. Or you can kill yourself in this thing, which is funny. This guy dies after taking a few needles to the face, and you get a weapon you only see in this level, the sticky detonator. It's unfair that it's only in this level. You shoot it, it sticks to something, you detonate it. It's straightforward and limitlessly entertaining. You come out into this big old landing bay, and you need to find a way to keep the Covenant out, so Cortana tells you about an erection you can cause. Problem is, the controls to do that are out in the far end of the bay, so it results in this fun little balancing act of deciding when it's safe to do that. You have no cover out there, so you need to decide how many Covenant you can deal with on the way back, but you can't spend too long taking guys out from this end because Phantoms will just keep dropping more troops. It's really cool. So you climb up this this part and you can see everywhere you've been already from up here. It's a minor detail, but it's a good way to remind you that this is a real place full of real people. Speaking of, let's talk about the people. This is the second time in the entire series you fight alongside people who are completely unequipped to deal with a Covenant invasion, the only other time being Halo Reach's level Exodus. You see people in lab coats with pistols, you hear people shouting for their friends on top of Dr. Tilson's emphatic gratitude and other exclamations. These people are not and never were equipped to deal with a full-scale attack from anyone, let alone the Covenant. You are Obi-Wan Kenobi, their only hope. So after dealing with hunters again, you have this reserved, dialed-back cutscene with Dr. Tilson, where you come to the conclusion that the only way to stop the Didact from acquiring the Composer is to blow it up with a nuclear device. This is an unfathomably difficult conclusion for Tilson to come to, but for Chief, it's the only option that makes sense, and Cortana even jokes about it. This is the first time in the games that Chief interacts with a civilian, and it paints a clear picture of just how much humanity and empathy is missing from Spartans, particularly Spartan 2s, who have never known anything but the fight. Straight out of the cutscene, you see the Composer for the first time, but any reverence you could have had for it is wisely undercut by the destruction of the first evacuation shuttle. Despite the name of the level, it's not about the Composer, it's about the people you're trying to save, and to save them, you gotta activate the turrets posted around the station. You can't be standing there staring at the Composer. After this guy takes way too long to open this door, you eventually find yourself in a small arena battle. Now, I've been bashing arena battles this whole time, but I actually love this one because you can do this. Wow, that sucks! Because they get sucked out there a lot. So you get to the control station and Cortana has another episode which, you know, might make you think twice about giving her control of several mass drivers, but it's what you gotta do, so you do it. And then you have this nice little character moment where Cortana asks Chief not to tell Halsey how bad her rampancy got. I didn't know an AI could feel insecurity, but this little moment, which seems like a bit of throwaway dialogue, really resonated with me. One of the last parts of this level is a massive arena battle where you fight off everything the Covenant can throw at you. Infantry with fuel rod cannons, ghosts, wraiths, banshees, phantoms. This guy will even start shooting at you with a chain gun if you don't take him out. After Cortana panics, not knowing where the Didact is, and after the Covenant mysteriously retreat, you rush to an elevator to get to Tilson when this happens. Cortana reacts appropriately, and Chief, to his only friend, speaks calmly and reassuringly, asking her for her help, and then he thanks her, a first in their entire in-game relationship. After that touching moment, you have what is probably my favorite cutscene in the entire series. I'm not gonna show it on YouTube because they might get mad at me, but the Composer is used on Ivanov Station, and it's not as pleasant as the video of this cat cleaning another cat I'm showing you right now. But that's only half the cutscene. The second half is a conversation between Cortana and Chief, a conversation which answers the question of which one of them is the machine.
We need to move.
These people are gone.
And more will follow if the Didact reaches Earth.
Composer comes together to be the perfect blend of gameplay and narrative. It's varied but focused. It's bombastic but touching. It's fantastical but deeply, deeply human. I've tried to stay consistent when making this list, because I want you to be able to figure out what causes me to like a level and what causes me to dislike one. Arena battles are an artificial way to extend the length of a level, but when they make sense narratively, they can be one of the best parts. If the level is packed with story beats without becoming unfocused, it can be the highlight of the entire game. If the narrative is intertwined with the gameplay, the level instantly becomes more than the sum of its parts. But really, what's the best way to tell if a level is good? You can comb through it and pick out little details, break down its layout, catalog all its weapons and vehicles, marvel at its set pieces, but none of that makes you like a level, really. The best way to tell if you like a level or not is different for every person, and all it is the answer to a simple yes or no question. Do you want to play it again? That was the metric I measured every level on this list against. The desire to revisit a level and rediscover it, to unlock its secrets, to approach it from different angles, to assemble my own interpretation of its presentation. With that in mind, how could my number one level, what I deem to be the greatest Halo level ever made, be anything other than Mombasa Streets? I might be cheating a little bit with this level. It's closer to a hub world than an actual level with an explicit linear structure, but it's listed as a level and it's not a tutorial or one of these, so it's on this list. And it's at the top, obviously. This is the first playable level in Halo 3 ODST. After an orbital drop that goes a little worse than planned, you, the rookie, veer way off course and get knocked out for who knows how long. Oh. Okay, never mind. When you wake up, there's nothing happening. It's dark and rainy, the only source of light being the city itself. You force open your pod, and before you can stop yourself, you plummet 30 feet to the ground. You find a noisy first aid station, patch yourself up, and wander around the war-torn city. You come across a Covenant patrol and engage them, and you find that, unlike the previous 3 games, a pack of grunts and a single brute is a much more serious threat. After taking them out, you hear a phone ring and wonder if someone's trying to help you. You answer it and immediately begin interfacing with the city's superintendent AI, the system that runs everything in New Mombasa, from traffic lights to security cameras to advertisements. The superintendent gives you what you lost when you got separated from your squad. Something to do. After a quick tutorial, you look up and notice this sign that says, "Look out, keep right." You decide to follow it and notice another sign actually change from an ad to a detour sign. So you're like, okay, I'm clearly being led somewhere, when you walk past more signs that continue to point you in the direction of your goal, and suddenly, you don't feel so alone. You make your way through a courtyard full of grunts and climb the stairs of this building until eventually you get to a helmet embedded in a screen that seems to be trying to get your attention, and that's it. That's the level. Except that's not even a little bit true. You revisit the streets of New Mombasa between every mission where you play as another one of your squad mates. The very first time you return to this level, you hear what is arguably the greatest song in all of Halo, Rain, a piece of music that knocks your soul out of your body and flings it into the stratosphere and then just watches as it plummets back down to the earth. All your time in this level is spent with one goal in mind. Find someone, anyone. Rain puts to song just how seemingly hopeless that goal is to achieve. You might find yourself feeling guilty walking the streets of New Mombasa by yourself, seeing all the abandoned vehicles, human and Covenant alike, some still on fire even in the constant rain. You might not be able to help but wonder if it would have looked any different had you woken up 6 hours earlier. You might even wonder if your presence would have made any difference at all. But you know, set dressing and theming only gets you so far. What about the actual physical level itself? Halo has a history of having you visit the same places from earlier levels, but with a twist, like traveling through them backwards, facing new enemies, or both. Mombasa Streets is that concept at its most effective. Occasionally you'll walk through a section of the city and realize that you've seen it before, that you had just been there in the previous level. You might even see the vehicle you were driving. Sometimes you'll get to a location where clearly a lot of shit went down, and then you'll find out in the following level exactly what happened. The clues in these locations can be anything from the optics module of a drone to a used up can of biofoam to a sniper rifle bent completely in half hanging from an electrical wire, and when you find them, it triggers the next level, during which you discover how it came to be where it was. The city also hides other optional secrets. Throughout the level you may find terminals that could be anything from a payphone to a UNSC recruitment kiosk. There are 30 of these terminals strewn across New Mombasa, and they tell the story of Sadie Indesha, the daughter of Daniel Indesha, the creator of the superintendent, and its Virgil subroutine, which was created specifically to take care of Sadie. When you find enough of these terminals, you'll unlock these supply caches, which contain extra ammo and even sniper rifles, rocket launchers, and mongoose. This level does something that no other level in the game does. It invites you to explore it. It's weird, isn't it, that the #1 level on this list isn't the most exciting, but actually the least exciting level? But then again, you know, it's not about that. It's all about what makes you want to come back to a level. Halo 3 ODST instantly and deliberately subverts your expectations of what a Halo game can and should be. Walking around the ruined city, lost and alone, scared of enemies you could walk right over as Master Chief, this is what came out of the Halo franchise immediately after the adrenaline-fueled thrill ride that was Halo 3's final level. This was an incredibly bold and risky move by Bungie, and I think it paid off better than they could have ever hoped for. The music is beautiful and somber, and the atmosphere is better than it's ever been before or since. It tells a story without a single line of expository dialogue, without hardly any dialogue at all. There are limitless ways you can approach going through this level, up to the point where aside from that very first encounter, you don't have to kill a single enemy if you don't want to. But none of those things on their own make Mombasa Streets my favorite level. It's my favorite level because no matter how many times I play it, I just want to go back. So, there you go. If you're still with me, thank you so much for watching this video. This has been such a fun, taxing, monumental project, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please consider liking the video, sharing it around, and please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories about the video and the Halo franchise. Until next time, guys.